The story kicks off under a beautiful starlit sky, sparking memories of that meteor shower from back in the day. The boy's mom assures him that a miracle is definitely coming his way at the perfect time. The night was gorgeously lit up by that meteor shower, which sadly also felt like a painful goodbye. Hashizora reveals that after that moment in the field, he never saw his mother again. Next, we see him alone on a deserted hilltop, fiddling with his telescope in the middle of the night. 10 long years have already flown by since his mother vanished without leaving a single clue. Ever since that tragic day, the boy has been anxiously waiting for that astronomical event to happen again. Staring intently through the telescope lens, he holds on to the hope that the space phenomenon will make a comeback. As he gazes into the vastness of outer space, our main guy admits that his faith in a miracle is still unshakable. Out of nowhere, a hand pops up, handing him a cold can of sports drink. Seiyu gives him props for his dedication, noting that he went out there all alone again and could have invited her. Startled by the unexpected appearance, the guy asks why she's there, pointing out how sketchy it is at this hour. Feeling a bit awkward, she reminds him that they're partners on a super important research project. They had promised to use this school project as their golden ticket to get into the same university later on. The student agrees with the school project proposal casually, but the vibe of the memory changes fast. In the past, some pushy intruder barged into the club room, yelling to see if anyone was around. Without a shred of guilt, her group started wrecking the expensive gear, slowly taking over the space. The vandals had already swiped the research grant money before anyone even noticed. Making matters way worse, the invaders turned the study room into a hangout spot for their gang. Back to the present, Hashizora calms Seiyu down, saying he successfully changed the bank account password. Right at that moment, a flash suddenly streaks across the sky, completely grabbing the prota's attention. Thinking it's a real meteor, he quickly realizes it's just the ember of a lit cigarette. Panicking at what he sees, he tries to react fast, knowing the massive damage it could cause if the ember hits his. Unfortunately, the hot spark lands right on his back, burning a hole in his clothes. Seiyu screams in terror while her friend freezes, realizing what's going down. Surrounded by darkness, the guy realizes with horror that the delinquents found their secret hideout. Nanju, the leader, mocks them both, saying she already knew about the spot and asking if the losers are a couple now. The criminal's lackey charges in angrily, demanding the new password and threatening to knock the boy's teeth out. Faced with imminent danger, Hashizora stammers with nerves, not sure how to act while being so intimidated. Summoning some serious courage, he shouts that he won't say a single thing, protecting the hard-earned money for the school project. Completely out of nowhere, Nanju delivers a brutal kick right to the student's weak stomach. Stomping on the boy on the ground without any mercy, she gives him an intimidating warning to watch his mouth. Adding to his suffering, the leader promises she'll correct his rebellious behavior herself. Tossed on the filthy ground, the main character curls up, clutching his abdomen, trying to fight through the pain. Immediately after, the antagonist turns her attention to the other victim and attacks Seiyu sneakily, throwing the girl to the ground with force. Seeing the unfair assault, Hashizora jumps up in desperation and runs over, demanding an explanation. Grabbing the vulnerable girl's hair, Nanju lets out a sadistic laugh, declaring that her boyfriend has been written off. At that moment, the henchman roughly grabs their friend and tries to pull at her clothes, causing instant panic for both of them. In total shock, the student freezes for a moment while watching his best friend being mistreated by them. In this decisive moment, he remembers the peaceful day when she admitted she was into astronomy. The girl had proposed with great enthusiasm that they start the club at school together. With a huge smile, she had sworn that they would get into the same university no matter what. Returning to the brutal forest scene, the girl struggles in agony while Nanju gets annoyed by her resistance. Finding the situation funny, the criminal declares that troublesome victims require the use of brute force. Suddenly, though, the giant man turns his bleeding face after feeling a hard hit tearing his skin. The heavy telescope frame served as an improvised weapon, shattering on the ground after hitting the thug's face. With blood gushing from the wound, the big guy mumbles, dazed, trying to figure out the attack. With his hand still raised from the throw, the boy screams, demanding that the criminal let his friend go. Caught off guard by the boy's unexpected bravery, the attacker stands still while processing the pain in his face. In a split second, the guy is taken over by deadly rage and lunges, insulting the meddling kid. Knowing he's physically way out of his league, Hashizora screams at the top of his lungs for the girl to escape right now. While the furious criminal grabs the prota, Seiyu flees in tears, yelling that she's calling the authorities. Even held violently, the student keeps his focus and buys time for the strategy to work. Taking advantage of a small opening, the guy runs into the forest to act as live bait. In a desperate sprint along the dark path, he runs through the foliage, lit only by the shine of the stars. His tired footsteps echo through the deserted forest as he tries to lose his threatening pursuers. Inherent fatigue starts to tax his joints, but pure fear keeps his body from slowing down. Sweating cold and on the edge of complete exhaustion, he realizes with dread that he might not make it out of this alive. Devastated by his own bad luck, the guy wonders in his thoughts what his big mistake in life was. His only genuine wish was to keep chasing stars in the sweet delusion of seeing his family again. With no strength left to resist, the guy's legs suddenly give out, and he falls exhausted into the middle of the bushes. Looking into the void with resignation, he admits defeat and thinks that simply disappearing would be for the best. In this exact fraction of a second of melancholy, a massive flash erupts from nothing, tearing through the celestial darkness. The guy lifts his head in shock, trying to figure out the unreal glow descending upon him. An immense fireball cuts through the planet's atmosphere, plunging at high speed toward the forest floor. Completely terrified by the vision of the end of the world, the proto lets out a scream with nowhere to run. The noise becomes deafening the moment the violent meteor collides with the Earth, blowing up the area. The brutal collision creates a devastating wave of light, leaving only the small silhouette of the boy resisting the power of the impact. As the space dust settles, the silhouette of a mysterious woman appears in the middle of the crater. In total despair at the events, the student covers his eyes with his hands that won't stop shaking. In the center of the flames still burning the ground, the unknown survivor stands, unharmed. Showing an angelic face of total disorientation, she blinks slowly, trying to figure out where she ended up. Tossed abruptly onto the grass, Hashizora remains motionless, looking at the mystical figure surrounded by intense flames. A dense, lethal silence dominates the ruined scenery while both stare at each other. The human's confused mind goes haywire trying to handle the scare and the girl's total nudity. With his attention diverted by the scene, Hashizora hears a yell from the woods and realizes his friend is in danger. Agonized by the emergency, the guy takes off his own coat as fast as he can. He offers the clothing item to the unknown girl, asking her to wear it temporarily. The stranger just stares at the heavy clothing, not understanding a single thing about it. In an extremely naive way, she asks directly how one even wears that. The guy freezes for a moment, shocked by her complete ignorance about something so basic. The alien stranger keeps looking at him, waiting patiently for any explicit instructions. Suddenly, though, a voice rings through the woods, signaling that the delinquents have located him. In complete terror, the proto begs the unknown woman to simply stand up and open her arms. Amamiya appears in the middle of the foliage, full of rage, screaming that the meddling kid can consider himself dead. To protect the target, Hashizora stands in front with arms wide open, blocking the attacker's view. The thug stops walking immediately, thinking the nerd's absurd defensive position is bizarre. Sweating cold from tension, the guy screams desperately for the attacker not to look, claiming she's changing clothes. The delinquent doubts the kid's mental health, asking who he's talking to in the middle of the forest. To the student's astonishment, the area right behind him in the crater is completely empty. Amamiya grabs Hashizora by the collar with resentment, while the guy tries to stammer an explanation that a meteor fell and a naked girl came out of it. Even hanging in the air, he tries to explain himself, saying he just lent her his coat. The giant stares at the victim with an expression of total aversion and extreme intolerance. The bottom of the crater remains only burnt and in total silence. Bothered by the excuses, the criminal demands that he stop telling those stories that make no sense. The thug shoves the boy with force, giving him 5 seconds to reveal the bank password. Preparing a hard hit, the delinquent starts the countdown without a shred of compassion. At this exact moment, an immense pillar of purple energy explodes violently between the two. The criminals freeze in fear immediately, while the main character notices that the girl is back. A giant dark shadow starts to take shape in the middle of the strong magical flame. The macabre entity flexes its strong arms, pushing the energy around it away with brutality. The student's eyes widen in absolute terror at the monstrous creature. A colossal and incredibly muscular woman emerges, walking with heavy steps from inside the purple fire. The thugs stay completely inert, trembling in front of the bizarre figure. Watching the terrifying scene, Hashizora realizes that it is indeed the girl, but on a massive scale. The colossal being opens its glowing eyes, staring at the group with an intimidating presence. One of the pupils concentrates intensely, emitting a red glow like a deadly radar. A targeting mechanism appears in the monster's vision, analyzing the humans standing there. The main focus locks without hesitation on Hashizora, defining him as the priority target for destruction. With a deep tone of voice, the shadowy entity asks who holds the original power there. Without understanding a single thing, the student asks what she is talking about. In a fraction of a second, an invisible strike cuts both henchmen in half with extreme brutality. Blood gushes in all directions, passing very close to the face of the terrified proto. The corpses fall lifeless on the forest floor, leaving Amamiya and the young man in a state of shock. The nerd freezes where he is, trying to process the surreal massacre that just unfolded. Surrounded by a gentle golden glow, the first mysterious girl lands gracefully on the ground. The young man stammers, full of terror, noticing that the fatal blow came directly from her. He has trouble even breathing, shocked by the absurd speed of the attack. Without any prior warning, the giant limb of the purple creature is cut off, resulting in a huge jet of blood. The colossal arm collapses with weight on the grass, sinking into the ground exactly in front of the student. Stained with the criminal's blood, Hashizora falls to his knees, in a state of deep trauma and paralyzed. The giant monster looks at its own amputated and bloody limb, annoyed that it didn't manage to eliminate the target. The glowing girl stands calmly in front of the human to protect him from the colossal entity. Using the guy's jacket, the young woman goes after the adversary with terrifying speed. Noticing the fierce attack, the purple being gets ready to counterattack the fatal blow. Knocked onto the dirty grass, the student watches his savior with close attention. He speaks quietly to himself, confirming that it is indeed the same girl from moments ago. Examining the small rival, the giantess deduces that she definitely isn't an earthling. The stranger walks calmly inside a magic circle, radiating a fierce presence. Overflowing with wrath, the colossal being declares that she will eliminate this invader first. A massive shot of devastating energy is launched by the colossal hand in the girl's direction. Without showing any fatigue, she dodges the lethal beam with formidable dexterity. Her soft feet touch the ground, creating strong sparks of pure fire magic. Taking advantage of the ideal opening, the fighter delivers a violent flying kick right into the giantess' face. With the destructive force of the strike, the shadowy creature is thrown back brutally, left off balance. After the precise attack, the fighter lands softly back on the forest floor. Her gaze shines intensely, revealing an unshakable resolve against the monster. Regaining her balance, the giant being shows a deformed face full of furious eyes. The young fighter's arm catches fire, emitting pure flames of extreme power. Dark and macabre flames try to ensnare the girl's body in a lethal trap, but fail. The monster declares with a demonic voice that fragile human is her exclusive property. The giant entity summons a dark ball of pure energy, similar to a black hole. A catastrophic detonation swallows the entire forest in a flash of absolute destruction. The area once full of life turns into only an ocean of living flames and smoldering ashes. In the center of the burning hell, the girl remains standing and completely unharmed. However, she turns her face with apprehension upon sensing that something went very wrong behind her back. Walking through the ruined landscape, the fighter finds the main character's body stretched on the ground. The girl lifts the boy's bloodied face with delicacy, trying to wake him up gently. She embraces the human's limp body in a moment of silent suffering illuminated by the moon. A burning hole pierces the young man's chest from one side to the other, leaving only the hope of a miracle. The fatal wound on the boy's chest starts to glow with a mystical force, healing the serious injury. Holding his body securely, the young woman assures him that she will keep her promise. She watches his recovery with a fixed, glowing gaze under the moonlight. Making a solemn oath under the star-covered sky, the stranger declares that she will protect him at any cost. High in the night sky, the meteor shower starts again, lighting up the darkness of the woods. The red-haired girl confirms that an authentic miracle will finally reach the guy. At that moment, the terrifying memory of the amputated arm gushing blood takes over the boy's mind. Waking up with a start, Hashizora lets out a scream of terror in his bed, sweating cold from the massive scare. In a panic at the clear memory, he touches his own arm, trying to check if he still has it in one piece. Breathing with difficulty, the student tries to calm himself while processing what just happened. Looking to the side, he notices the unknown girl sleeping peacefully while wearing his jacket. Overcome by pure shock, the young man pulls away abruptly, slamming his back against the bedroom wall. Waking up from the noise, the intruder rubs her eyes, grumbling about the racket so early in the morning. Upset with her calmness, he points his finger, demanding to know who she is and what she's doing in his home. Still sleepy, the extraterrestrial blinks, disoriented, trying to understand the overreaction of the jacket's owner. Dying of embarrassment at the scene, the boy hides his face, swearing he didn't see absolutely anything. Trying to mask the tension, he uses the excuse that he sees really poorly without his glasses. However, the girl's figure in front of him appears with perfect clarity to his eyes. The student is totally disoriented to notice that his vision problem suddenly disappeared by a miracle. Trying to focus on another subject, Hashizora feels his face burn with shyness due to her lack of clothing. Turning his face away quickly, he begs the intruder to find a way to cover that outfit. Surprisingly, the redhead comes very close to his ear and whispers his full name. Shocked by the data, the young man asks right away how she knows his identity. The memory of last night in the woods returns with full force, showing the exact moment they met. Astonished by the conclusion, he finally understands that insane situation wasn't just a horrible nightmare. Overflowing with confidence, the alien recalls that she came to Earth with the exclusive goal of protecting him. An awkward silence takes over the room for a few moments while the boy absorbs the context. Interrupting the atmosphere abruptly, the student jumps out of bed, warning that he needs to go to school soon. Without paying attention to the space madness, he puts on his school uniform as fast as he can inside the room. Already dressed properly, Hashizora acts as if everything were routine to try to run from that huge dilemma. Agonized to escape that unreal scene, the young man runs toward the bedroom door. With his heart beating fast, his number one goal now is to run from the girl who for sure isn't from our planet. Quickly, he grabs the doorknob in the hope of managing to open the door in time to escape. However, before he manages to unlock it, the alien jumps and hugs the boy from behind with extreme strength. Due to the violent bump, the student's face ends up being pressed mercilessly against the wooden door. Holding the boy firmly, the young woman warns in a serious voice that it's very risky for him to go out there unaccompanied. She warns about the diverse galactic dangers that are on his trail, strengthening the hug even more. Uncomfortable with the physical contact, Hashizora tries to break free, questioning that absurd talk about extraterrestrials. Abruptly, the girl's energy disappears for good and she starts to slide down his back. Unable to stay on her feet, the redhead collapses with force to the ground, right behind the perplexed student. Terrified by the sudden fainting, he questions desperately what just happened to his bodyguard. Totally exhausted, the stranger whispers that she ran out of strength because she hasn't eaten in many months. Looking at the dramatic situation on the floor, the guy breathes easier, realizing the whole crisis was just hunger. A short time later, the young man offers a well-served plate of omelet accompanied by rice to the visitor in the kitchen. Without hesitating, the girl dives into the food, taking a huge bite directly out of the hot meal. Trying to bring some manners to the situation, Hashizora grabs a spoon and shows calmly how the utensil should be used. He details step by step that the tool is for cutting the soft, yellow portion of the food. Showing how it works in practice, the boy takes the rice with the egg to make the perfect bite. Unable to resist the display, the girl takes the food directly from the young man's hand, chewing happily. However, in a bizarre mistake, the alien bites the metal of the utensil itself, breaking the tip with her bite. The girl complains calmly that that rigid portion has a terrible taste, driving the cook crazy. Checking the late time on the phone, the student recognizes the loss, aware that he already missed the school day. Ignoring the guy's academic issues, the visitor keeps stuffing her mouth with the delicious meal. Scratching his face thoughtfully, the boy tries to understand how his eye problem disappeared out of nowhere. Observing the starving stranger, the main uncertainty regarding who these villains are dominates his thoughts. The terrifying memory of the giant creature that manifested in the woods returns to disturb his exhausted mind. The young man remembers the lethal and suffocating energy of that shadowy being that almost murdered him easily. The redhead confirms with her mouth full that that colossal being was just one of countless that will come after him. Combining all the disconnected information, the guy evaluates the complete insanity into which his routine turned in such a short time. Reviewing the unreal events, he remembers the exact instant in which the mystical figure came out naked from the crater. Following the sequence of facts, the student remembers he had to protect the stranger with his own jacket. Immediately after, the true colossal and naked threat emerged, devastating everything in its path using magical power. The brutal magical attack that severed the monster's arm returns like a bloody flash in the guy's memory. Trembling with anxiety, the young man hugs his own body as the shock of the scary night reappears. Interrupting the state of paralysis, the redhead comes with her face very close, yelling his name at the table. Totally caught off guard by the approach, Hashizora feels his face burn with pure shyness. Satisfied with the meal, the girl gets up, wiping her mouth, and warns that the moment for official introductions has arrived. Filled with innate firmness, she confesses that her true battle name is MGS. Performing a triumphant and brilliant pose, the alien warrior reinforces her divine task of keeping him safe. Still a bit confused in his line of thought, the boy repeats the term protection, trying to absorb his new routine. Quite enthusiastic, the stranger demands that he have much more trust in her than in any other living being. Curious about the mechanical name, the guy concludes that this strange numerical order operates as an identity. Explaining earthling habits with patience, the young man informs that such long codes aren't practical on this planet. To solve this culture clash, the student proposes creating a temporary nickname that's simple to say. Using the stars as a source of light, he snaps his fingers, excited, and decides to name the girl Shiho. Explaining the origin, Hashizora explains that the nickname Shiho is just the word star read backward. The extraterrestrial raises her arms, shining with joy, celebrating the fact that she finally has an earthly name. Fatigued by the scenario, the student limits himself to observing the girl's enthusiasm. He leaves the bedroom, closing the door afterward, looking to catch his breath. Leaning against the hallway wall, the young man tries to digest the reality of housing an extraterrestrial at home. The biggest obstacle is that her physical form is very similar to a human's and is incredibly beautiful. However, her complete lack of sense about personal space and decency puts him into an absolute nervous breakdown. He reflects on the reasons that made her travel through space to protect him and notices he has thousands of doubts. Concentrating on the present moment, the prota stares at the door, planning his next move. The main urgency now is to provide undergarments for the visitor quickly. Just by considering the need to go to a store to buy that kind of clothing, he dies of shyness. However, aware that he has no alternative, the guy decides he must solve this problem. Abruptly, Seiyu trips on the ground outside the residence and lets her glasses fall. The guy hurries to his friend with worry, questioning what she's doing in that place. Angry and in tears, the friend yells that she was worried because he vanished and didn't even go to school. Trying to calm down, the girl warns that she has something to show and proposes they go inside to talk. In a state of total terror, the main character blocks the way and tries to persuade her to go get a coffee. Finding the situation bizarre, Seiyu disregards the excuse, saying his house is messy and she's thirsty. The door opens suddenly, showing Shiho, who asks who's there and warns about the risk outside. The friend freezes where she is, trying to understand who the girl is, wearing only her friend's jacket. Filled with suspicion, the high school friend asks if that stranger is actually a normal person. Hearing the term, the alien invokes strong mystical flames in her own hand. Foreseeing the worst-case scenario, she concludes that the invader is just another one of the adversaries trying to capture her target. Agonized by the nearby threat, the student yells with all his strength for her to stop the action. Seiyu freezes in terror as the deadly fire gets threateningly close to her face. Hashizora puts himself in the middle, justifying in a rush that the newcomer is his only friend. Still frightened, the bespectacled girl starts to connect the dots, remembering last night. The memory of the star shower falling violently to the ground invades her mind. She thinks about the real meaning of that scary space event. Maintaining her hostile attitude, Shiho points her finger and decides she will never trust the human at all. The bodyguard warns rigidly that anyone close to the boy could represent a disguised danger. At this moment, the traumatic memory of the cowardly assault in the woods returns with intensity. The boy feels a chill, noticing the size of the danger from the previous night's situation. The violent memory works as a clear warning about the authentic dangers surrounding them. Suddenly, the extraterrestrial changes her tone of voice, hugging the guest and deducing that she is a common earthling. Calmer for having prevented a disaster at the house entrance, the main character falls to his knees on the floor. He hurries to support his trembling friend, proposing they go inside quickly before the situation gets worse. With an angry expression, the guy throws a scathing look at the irresponsible visitor, while she shows a pure smile. Ignoring the silent reprimand, the redhead turns and enters the house calmly. A little later, a glass of cold water is offered to calm the human girl's nervous state. Already in the living room, the house owner hands the water to his friend settled on the sofa. Running his hand through his neck, embarrassed, he apologizes for the lie and warns that the story is surreal. Without hesitation, Seiyu declares with absolute conviction that the unknown girl is an extraterrestrial. The student gets a massive scare at the speed with which his friend figured out his biggest mystery. Pointing to the window, he asks how the intruder accessed the fourth floor, and the girl just smiles with pride. Fixing her glasses, the human girl directs all her focus to the exotic person in front of her. Emanating full confidence, Shiho receives the intrigued looks illuminated by the window's light. With everyone together, the host completes the entire narrative regarding the confusing incidents in the woods. Rubbing his temples, the young man confesses that this whole space narrative is very hard to believe. However, his friend disregards the pressure and smiles from ear to ear with eyes radiant with enchantment. The student limits himself to watching the girl's explosion of joy, completely shocked by the optimistic reception. Overcome by her nerd soul passionate about astronomy, she joins her hands, ecstatic with the intergalactic find. Filling the guest with questions about her home world, she finds out the planet is called Misha. Apprehensive about his friend's judgment, Hashizora remembers she almost turned to ashes moments ago. Overflowing with positivity, Seiyu shrugs, assuring that crazy things like that really happen. Defeated by psychological exhaustion, the young man breathes deeply, admitting there's no way to fight her enthusiasm. He gently places his hand on the alien bodyguard's head to attract her attention. In a more serious tone, he warns that he has an academic life, and she can't go around assaulting others. Annoyed by the criticism, the warrior grumbles, warning that she also has her own problems to solve. Detailing the physics of the universe, she tells that each world radiates unique dimensional vibrations in its natives. The extraterrestrial highlights that the inhabitants of Earth have particular tunes that she should sense naturally. The difficulty is that her organism hasn't adjusted, making her perceptive senses excessively flawed. Understanding the weight of the problem, the human deduces that the fighter isn't able to distinguish an Earthling from an aggressor. Showing a scary smile, the redhead decides she will eliminate everyone who has a suspicious attitude. Going into complete despair, the boy begs at the top of his lungs for her not to cause a massacre. Without caring about the risk of death, Seiyu puts a flyer on the table and proposes they disappear for a period. The flyer shows blurry images of the two, being indicated as the main suspects of having started the fire on the ridge. The girl with glasses clarifies that she came in a rush precisely to warn him regarding the police report. She explains that upon being escorted back to the woods by police cars in the early morning, the landscape had changed. The whole region was burning in flames, and the monitoring cameras only recorded the pair at that location. Taken by panic, Hashizora looks for a justification, asking if the group of vandals provoked the flames and escaped. With a serious expression, the friend rejects the hypothesis, remembering the devastating strike in the crater. The protagonist finally connects the information and notices that the delinquents were exterminated by the colossal creature. In a place far from there, the decided footsteps of a mysterious girl echo isolatedly through the deserted hallway. A bright-colored inflatable ball rolls slowly along the floor until it stops exactly in front of the girl's shoes. The mysterious girl bends gently in the hallway and picks up the colorful toy to give it to the child. Thanking her for the quick kindness, the little one in pajamas takes the object back without noticing the oppressive presence around her. At this exact moment, the memory of the alien being exterminating her lackeys in the woods returns to torment boss Nanju. As the young patient leaves calmly, the criminal continues her path through the quiet hospital hallways. Disturbed by the memory, the girl refuses to accept that the whole group was defeated so easily in the middle of the forest. Inside the hospital room, one of the gang members tells, disoriented, that he passed out right after receiving a blow from the nerd boy. The sidekick in the bed responds with enthusiasm as soon as the door unlocks, and the gang leader enters for the unexpected visit. Without issuing any warning, Nanju jumps with aggression onto one of the patients, pinning him to the bed. The wounded sidekick stays paralyzed, asking if this insane attitude has any connection with what he said before. Taking advantage of her physical superiority and posture, the intruder throws her body forward, exerting crushing force on the defenseless youth. Sensing a mortal risk, the patient yells in panic, asking for help from his partner in the other bed. The other gang member swallows hard and asks, trembling, what on earth has possessed their leader. Showing a shadowy aura and a glittering look, the commander immobilizes both sidekicks with brutal fury. Relieving the charged environment, a health professional unlocks the room door calmly, calling the patients by their names. The nurse freezes where she is, completely disoriented to notice that the patients vanished in the blink of an eye. The empty hospital bed with the messed-up bedding is the only sign that patients existed in that place. Trying to understand the abrupt disappearance, the nurse jumps from a scare upon hearing a noise behind her back. Behind the worker, the group of 3 delinquents appears surrounded by a dense purple force, communicating that they are leaving. Trembling without stopping, the professional turns slowly, asking where they got such an unfounded notion. Being held tightly by the shoulder, she hears the giant criminal reiterate that the team is in great shape. Agonized to escape the attack, the poor woman begs for them to loosen their grip, since they need total. As a last measure of protection, the nurse grabs the radio, threatening to call hospital security immediately. Before she manages to press the button, scary wires shoot out with speed, suffocating the victim's neck without mercy. The communication device falls from her weak hand and hits the hospital floor without any use. Radiating atrocious coldness, the possessed woman repeats in a dragged-out way that the gang is already recovered. Using her own hair stretched out like dark weapons, Nanju lifts the suffocated nurse into the building's employee loses consciousness quickly and her body falls violently, hitting the ground directly. Anguishing silence takes over the environment, leaving only the woman's inanimate body thrown on the cold floor. Behaving as if nothing had happened, the criminals turn their backs on the scene of the murder and continue walking. Guiding the macabre walk, the antagonist celebrates with spirit, declaring that she is anxious to meet partner Amamiya again. At another moment in the middle of the night, Nanju flees in total panic along the dark forest route. Breathing fast due to the flight, the girl remembers the super loud rumble that motivated her to go to the scene of the mess. Upon reaching the central point of the disaster, she sees the gigantic mystical entity standing in the center of the absolute destruction. Hidden with caution behind a trunk, the bandit trembles with fear upon realizing that the creature exterminated her lackeys. The image of another partner of the group takes over her mind, bringing the agony that perhaps everyone has died. Cornered by the unreal threat, the human runs again like crazy through the vegetation, illuminated by a red glow. Tearing the night sky brutally, a second celestial body full of cosmic energy falls into the area. From inside the remaining purplish energy, a dark alien matter comes out sneakily in search of the closest target. Noticing the strange noise behind her back, the criminal accelerates her run, trying to escape that thing, whatever it is. With no possibility of escape, the dark mass jumps mortally through the air directly toward the girl's back. Caught off guard by the fast threat, the leader turns her body, scared, trying to figure out the treacherous attack. The formless creature hits the victim's face squarely, entering the girl's mouth by force to take control of her body. Returning to the current troubled moment in the hospital hallway, the gang leaves the employee's body behind. With her consciousness controlled by the parasite's desire, Nanju concentrates her main purpose on finding the disappeared ally in the metropolis. A precious stone shines strongly in the empty darkness, confirming that the predator senses the location of the target with exactitude. Crossing the night in the city, the typical noise of police sirens echoes frantically between the large urban buildings. Walking through the busy ways, the girl with bright eyes swears in thought that soon she will reach the missing partner. In the calm environment of the boys' residence, the famous police flyer with their images remains abandoned on the living room table. Evaluating the conspiracy theory, Seiyu rejects the idea of intentional fire, assuring that the group was annihilated by the space beast. Hashizora feels intrigued by the disappearance of the adversaries and asks what was the real and tragic fate of the troublemakers. The studious friend agrees, highlighting that the gang didn't go to class that day and prays for them to disappear for good. Wishing to escape this tense subject, the owner of the house changes the subject, complaining that the current need is to get clothes for Shiho. Being against the idea of going out, the cosmic warrior squeezes the boy's arm, warning that he is banned from going out without protection. Intrigued by the celestial gifts, the friend asks directly if the extraterrestrial doesn't have some ability to shrink in size or disguise herself. The fighter from space frustrates the expectations immediately, declaring clearly that she doesn't master those metamorphosis techniques. Seiyu is terrified, remembering the traditional horrifying stories about parasites that enter the mouth to assume human bodies. Terrified by the scary theme, the protagonist diverts the course of the conversation, asking what is the common clothing style in her world. Disregarding the difficulty of human morality, the fighter touches her finger to her face, asking if clothing is something so essential. In a momentary burst of genius, Shiho jumps back, enthusiastic, ensuring she remembered an alternative that's quite similar. Unbuttoning her coat with the greatest fluidity in the world, the alien shows her bare skin underneath, believing she solved the whole conflict of suitability. The scare is so severe that both humans scream at the same time, turning their faces not to face the girl's lack of decency. Activating her spells, the protector creates a combat armor extremely tight to the body and adopts a posture full of pride. A few hours later, the three decide to try a safe outing and reach the expensive store windows of a huge mall in the area. Standing in the women's department hallway, Hashizora waits for the clothes fitting, concentrated silently on the locked booth. Regretting the wait, the friend lets out a defeated sigh, observing that she made a big mistake by not going in with the ET to assist her. Exactly at that moment, the booth curtain moves, indicating that the different user finally concluded the process. Shiho leaves the booth wearing a common white school shirt, however, demonstrating serious problems with the fit of the clothing. Suffering under the tension of the small cloth, the extraterrestrial yells in agony that she is losing all the air in her lungs. Both young people freeze, observing the material give way, and the fighter tremble with effort to endure the absurd tightness. The force exerted on the seams reaches its absolute limit, forcing the small plastic fasteners brutally. Unable to contain the severe pull, the center button is expelled from the shirt, flying through the air like a projectile. Hashizora cowers in fear, dodging in an automatic reflex while the small lethal piece cuts the air close to his face. With the costume torn and the chest area relieved, the space girl lets out a loud sigh of relief, celebrating that the sensation improved completely. The boy's mind suffers a collapse trying to digest the surreal fact of experiencing a classic manga scene in reality. Furious at the boy's enchanted reaction, Seiyu grabs him by the collar, pulling the nerd far away from that visual threat. The store clerk breaks the tension atmosphere, asking with education if they are going to buy the item. The employee points courteously to the checkout area so the buyers can complete the transaction. Quite embarrassed by the whole episode, Hashizora swipes the credit card while murmuring a quick apology. Already outside, Shiho shows off her new, informal outfit, while the protagonist breathes a sigh of relief for having managed to dress the girl. The girl's exotic charm captures the curious looks of two boys passing by the location right away. Several people around start murmuring with admiration, equating the red-haired girl to a famous personality. The student tries to hide his anxiety upon hearing the rumors that he would be the blessed partner of that beautiful woman. Seeing everything up close, Seiyu adopts a closed expression, feeling acute jealousy of the attention her friend receives. At that instant, a bespectacled girl in the middle of the crowd recognizes the schoolmate walking with the foreigner. The women around speculate, trying to guess if the redhead is just his younger sister or a classmate of his. Hearing the gossip that they look like a couple, the studious friend gets even more uncomfortable with the romance vibe. Naive regarding human habits, the alien pulls the collar of the shirt, protesting that this piece doesn't offer any practical defense. The young man tries to clarify with patience that clothes on this planet work more to guard the body in a social context. Amazed by the clarification, the space warrior asks with admiration if this habit is actually that relevant. The educational moment is interrupted suddenly by a woman's voice calling the student's name out loud on the street. With a gaze shining with happiness, the bodyguard assures that she will take care of the clothing with affection, since it was a gift given by him. Completely surrendered to the extraterrestrial's cuteness, the boy has his face turn red with shyness upon accepting her gratitude. Seiyu hides her red face, totally disappointed with herself for finding that whole interaction too adorable. Trying to escape this romantic pressure, the protagonist proposes they go eat something, exciting the redhead instantly. The group decides to go to the top floor and sits at the tables of a very crowded and familiar restaurant. Taking advantage of the break, the bespectacled friend confesses that her initial joy gave way to a bad feeling. Apprehensive about what is to come, she asks if the stranger will abandon Earth as soon as she solves the galactic conflicts. Trembling with nerves in the chair, the human girl persists in wanting to know the lethal adversaries who are tracking her friend better. The student from Earth wants to understand in detail what the real form of these beasts that bring danger is. Reflective, Shiho rests her jaw on her hand, remembering that the cosmos is immense and harbors diverse, completely different races. She explains that certain intruders resemble common people, while others consist of macabre parasites with the ability to change their appearance. With a hard and intense expression, the warrior warns that danger can hide perfectly in any location. The atmosphere in the restaurant gets tense when she raises the hypothesis that any individual inside there can be a disguised monstrous creature. Apprehensive about the nearby risk, Hoshizora asks for what reasons these beings pursue him and how they discovered he exists. Trying to understand the monster's intentions, the young man demands direct explanations, but gets scared when his partner places her hand on his chest. Releasing a light magic through the tip of her finger, the extraterrestrial declares that she is able to clearly feel the latent power inside him. The student's chest starts to radiate an enigmatic golden energy intensely, originating right below his dress shirt. Absolutely astonished by the light coming out of himself, he pulls away without understanding what absurd force that is. The fighter clarifies that this attractive force is exactly what the galactic invaders seek so desperately. Suddenly, Nanju appears behind the bench, resting her hands on the young man's shoulders and warning that she found him. The main character jumps from a scare in the chair upon identifying the gang leader, who assaulted him cowardly in the woods. Holding the boy at the table, the blonde girl warns in a terrifyingly peaceful tone of voice that the group came to talk about the previous day. While the human goes into a state of shock with the trap, Shiho keeps eating her dessert without any concern. To everyone's astonishment, all three delinquents throw themselves to the establishment floor, crying for forgiveness in a loud voice. The bizarre situation attracts the looks of the patrons, who start murmuring trying to understand the reason for such humiliation. Very embarrassed due to the public scandal, Hoshizora begs the troublemakers to stop that immediately. Still on her knees, the boss tells that she had a scary dream in which the student was murdered brutally by a monster. Exhibiting a strange feeling, the ex-adversary admits that the nightmare made her notice how indispensable he is to all of us. Seiyu murmurs, full of fear, to the alien, remembering that the aggressors would never behave with such spontaneous modesty. Demonstrating macabre confidence and pointed teeth, the protector agrees, stating that she is now able to sense their real nature. Without delay, the fighter jumps with dexterity over the table, prepared to start the fight in the center of the restaurant. The possessed commander lifts her face with a calm expression, without revealing any fear in the face of the fatal attack. With her hands glowing pure magic energy, the extraterrestrial warns, excited, that she will annihilate the threat infiltrated in that place. In a burst of strong flames, she conjures her deadly fire armor, prepared to carbonize the cruel invaders. Nearby patrons grab their smartphones, amazed, believing the magical change is some kind of video recording. Agonized by the approaching catastrophe, Hoshizora screams, demanding that his partner stop the mess in the middle of the people. Disregarding completely the requests of the boy she protects, the red-haired girl attacks implacably, marking the shiny floor with a trail of fire. The gang's sidekicks just watch the firefighter approach quickly, without making any effort to flee. The alien's flaming arm cuts through the wind with a fatal blow directed exactly at the fake human's chest. Applying her maximum force, Shiho grabs the giant's chest with the evident goal of ripping the adversary's body mercilessly. The student and his friend are stunned to notice that the magic hand passed through his flesh without causing any injury. With a macabre expression, Nanju grabs the arm of fire that passed through her partner's body as if it were pure wind. Maintaining her calm posture, the villain clarifies with sarcasm that they came there only to try to keep the peace. Disoriented by the adversary's absurd immunity, Seiyu and the student freeze while the customers continue recording the scene. The possessed sidekick faces the protagonist with shadowy eyes, warning frostily that he doesn't wish to extend this dialogue. Stretching her hand with authority, Nanju demands the boy be handed over so they can leave calmly. Rejecting the vile demand, the warrior delivers a devastating kick directly into the proud, possessed blonde girl's face. The observers recoil with fear at the real brutality of the attack, finally understanding that this isn't a staged scene. The force of the blow throws the enemy boss toward the tables, breaking the establishment's furniture with a huge noise. Emanating pure flaming wrath, Shiho decrees in a loud and clear voice that the inhabitant of Earth is her exclusive property. With an intimidating and lethal look, the Space Defender warns that she will by no means deliver the one she protects into the hands of the parasites. Fallen among the destroyed remains, the blonde girl is paralyzed as the dust settles in the location totally charged with tension. Disregarding the suffering of the violent blow, the antagonist starts to rise slowly from the pieces of wood and broken glass. The rival's face is taken over by macabre darkness, showing the true wicked nature residing in that human. Wiping the blood from her face sarcastically, the parasite insults the fearless heroine, calling her a stupid, egocentric brat. In a monumental burst of dark force, the macabre being asks with arrogance if the redhead girl believes she has control of that place. The suffocating force of the evil energy throws Hoshizora and the others back, shattering glass and causing collective hysteria. Overcome by total fear, the patrons scream in despair and flee the location, looking for an exit route. Sheltered close to the broken window, the main character watches the frantic escape with no idea how to proceed faced with the problem. In the middle of the ruined environment, Shiho remains standing and grand, willing to face the complete wrath of the danger. Laughing uncontrollably in the middle of the rubble, Nanju sentences that everyone there has permission to die, with the exception of Amamiya. Pointing incisively, the possessed boss warns that the student will return to their world accompanying the group. Without catching anything, Hoshizora asks about that nonsense while the rival details that she will insert him into a special growth tank until he reaches adulthood. The boy goes into a panic, questioning regarding the tank and reflecting silently on the reasons why the entire universe is hunting him. Directing her attention to the Earthling, the parasite confesses in a shadowy tone that the authentic reason for the pursuit is primordial energy. She clarifies that this constitutes the base energy of the cosmos in expansion since the Big Bang, which will manifest as soon as he reaches adulthood. The shadowy entity calculates that this colossal force will turn into something unbelievably potent further on. Overflowing with arrogance, the antagonist claims that, by possessing such a level of force, she will finally achieve her goal and bursts out laughing. Interrupting the adversary's joy immediately, Shiho throws a piercing look at the blonde and demands that she get out of her way. Astonished by the ally's aggressive behavior, the young man watches her tense, waiting for what the next action will be. At this moment, the two giant gang sidekicks arm themselves to strike, warning that the fun has reached an end and that they will destroy the pair. Radiating pure flames from her own body, the celestial warrior deduces that, therefore, it is no longer necessary to restrain her own power in battle. In a panic with the mortal purpose, the student begs the bodyguard not to murder the Earthlings, proposing only the removal of the extraterrestrials from inside them. Turning her face away in a relaxed way, the redhead recognizes she would even be capable of doing this, but grumbles that it seems like a very big effort. Without granting any opportunity for defense, the warrior leaves fiercely, applying a fiery blow directly to the first lackey's face. Astonished by the instant aggression, the main character swallows hard, noticing the simplicity of the lunge. Executing an acrobatic gesture, the extraterrestrial delivers a violent kick that throws the criminal upward with brutality. Taking advantage of the lack of attention, the larger-sized lackey tries to pin the heroine using both hands. However, moving at an absurd speed, she counterattacks by delivering a strong knee directly into the giant's chin. Both aggressors collapse totally unconscious to the floor, while Nanju emits a scream of terror at the fall of her team. Noticing the opening in the middle of the chaos, the young man grabs his friend's hand, aware that staying close to the fight is a death warrant. He drags the bespectacled girl, demanding that she accompany him quickly to a more protected environment far from the destruction. Watching the escape effort, the possessed leader gives a cruel smile, mentally elaborating her revenge plan. Countless shadowy appendages emerge from the ground, scaring the students while the antagonist makes fun of the evasion effort. Before they manage to do anything, the perverse bindings wrap around Seiya's figure, locking all her movements. The Earthling girl is hoisted through the air without any ceremony, left captured in the center of the ruined restaurant with no means to free herself. Making the picture worse, the cutting edge of one of the appendages places itself mortally very close to the prisoner's throat. Possessing control of the scene, Nanju warns that the boy is her property and demands his surrender if he wishes to rescue the annoying friend. Exerting even more mental pressure, the parasite gives an ironic laugh, asking if the earthling is unable to heed a basic command. Absolutely without alternatives, Hoshizora stretches his hands, heeding her demands, and yells for her to lower his friend to the ground right now. Cutting off his submission, Shiho asks if the guy truly wishes to spend his life in a tank, but the boy retorts, remembering Seiyu is captured. Maintaining control over the scenario, the leader warns in an intimidating way that she will end the friend's life instantly if he makes any sudden gesture. Breaking the heavy climate of the instant, the warrior from space rejects the submission categorically, leaving the antagonist disoriented. With her arm exhaling vapor of power, the bodyguard states naturally that she doesn't give a damn if a random human loses their life there. Hearing this brutal indifference, the protagonist goes into a state of complete shock, eyes wide open because of the disillusionment. Finding the lack of unity funny, Nanju mocks the guy's bad luck, while the captured one suffers in agony trapped in the dark strings. Overcome by agony, Hoshizora yells for the extraterrestrial not to act, and begs one more time to replace the imprisoned friend. The red-haired girl pulls her protage's shoulder firmly, ordering him to leave the girl aside and abandon this ineffective plan. Overcome by intense wrath, the young man acts instantly, delivering a strong blow to the warrior's hand to break free. He stares at the bodyguard severely, declaring in a tone full of deep disillusionment that she indeed doesn't understand the people of Earth. The scene of his super-enthusiastic friend returns to his thoughts, remembering how radiant she showed herself upon finally crossing paths with an alien. Placing himself with his back to the red-haired girl, he finishes the reflection complaining that after all that force given by her, the alien has this wicked posture. Filled with courage, the student decrees that Seiyu is the friendship of greatest value he has, and in case the warrior doesn't value that, their relationship is over. The flaming extraterrestrial stares at the ground without saying anything, apparently digesting the gravity of the heavy sentences uttered by the guy. Finishing the debate with resentment, the young man declares that if that's her point of view, then it will be necessary for them to say goodbye definitively. Catching the boy totally unprepared, Shiho grabs his collar, informing that they first need to perform an appropriate farewell. Without granting time to reply, the warrior lunges, pressing their mouths in a breathtaking and unexpected kiss. Throughout the contact, a mysterious red force starts to radiate from the young man's back while he freezes with bugged-out eyes. The response is immediate in the antagonist's organism, forcing the hidden extraterrestrial nature to tear the human victim's body to escape. The amorphous creature leaves completely from the middle of the darkness, feeling the powerful frequency of the primordial energy that was activated. The redhead interrupts the kiss, wiping her lips delicately, while the human tries to assimilate what just happened. Going straight past the stunned guy, the fighter waves from behind, saying goodbye to him sarcastically. Walking toward the adversaries, she warns that the young man should have behaved since the beginning, since he doesn't have the ability to control his own force. The parasite's focus concentrates entirely on the newly awakened power, releasing Seiyu from the deadly strings without caring about the girl. Immediately after, Hoshizora's left limb catches fire, turning into a surreal flaming paw. The possessed boss widens her vision in absolute incredulity at the Earthling's majestic alteration. Evaluating the pure energy, the antagonist notices with fear that the young man just assimilated the characteristics of a being from the world of Misha. Motivated by the newly gained energy, the student takes off at full speed, spreading a trail of fire along the floor. He crosses the environment like a flaming projectile, ignoring the bodyguard and focusing the offensive directly on the primordial threat. Overcome by absolute terror upon glimpsing her destruction approaching, Nanju lets out a high-pitched scream of genuine despair before the collision. Dumping all the accumulated celestial flame in a destructive blow, the main character asks if that degree of energy is enough. The shockwave reverberates through the universe, moving quickly to the furthest and most distant borders of the immense cosmos. In an incredibly distant galaxy, the technological bases of an enigmatic world start to register the brutal force oscillation. In the bowels of that shadowy planet, hooded figures congregate surrounded by darkness in a large hall with a floating globe. The group's collective mind asks how such a rudimentary and unimportant stellar cluster had the capacity to produce a miracle of that size. Concentrating on the fleshy, pulsating structure in the middle of the room, the antagonists note with irritation that an inferior creature activated the primordial origin. Several bizarre eyeballs open in the formless matter, manifesting intense frustration regarding how such an absurd situation managed to come to be. In a tone of total determination, The voices declare that this maximum potency needs to remain singular and is forbidden from coexisting in space. The assembly ponders on the hidden reason, warning that countless inferior entities are already heading to a world named Earth. Evaluating the disorderly context, a woman with short hair warns about the risks in case someone is able to control the energy source on their own. A giant structure with tentacles linked to the center ratifies the dark perspective, stating that the fact will result in a total calamity. In total agreement with the imminent danger, a small girl in a dress warns that this emergence will cause a disaster for the entire universe. A macabre being tells that they dispatched an elimination agent to the area agilely, but the extermination task was a resounding failure. A hooded figure mocks the executor's lack of capacity, asking how any inhabitant of Earth survived the lethal clash. Interrupting the useless conversation, the many-eyed creature asks the leader if the main task at the moment is just to wipe the human world off the map. An unknown commander observes with intrigue that they sent someone to planet Earth a long time ago. The monstrous being full of eyes murmurs the identity of Lee. With this, the leader remembers that rudimentary world was precisely the locality to which the fighter ended up banished on the last occasion. A form similar to a feline agrees, remembering that she already annihilated a whole planet previously, and proposes that she kill the target once and for all. Analyzing the state of that world, the assembly resolves that the banished one must perform a complete purification, if necessary since the human's planet has no value. Returning to the ruined restaurant, Amamiya tries to catch his breath after launching his flaming blow against the rival. Seiyu opens her eyes in total shock, unable to understand how her friend has the gift of using energy like that. Still disoriented with his own power, the student stares at his own burning limb, trying to digest what he just performed. The elevated temperature radiates from the fire claw newly created by the young man. Amazed by the event, Shiho concludes that the protected boy was indeed able to assimilate the power of the being from Misha. Knocked down among the ruins, the possessed leader emits groans of suffering, trying to re-establish herself from the violent hit she suffered. With a determined attitude, the boy demands that the nasty monster leave Nanja's organism instantly. The invader suffers strong contractions and insults the boy, calling him an ignored space monster while losing control over the human. Unable to endure the injury, the dark matter is forced out, being expelled with violence through the human girl's mouth. Taking advantage of the ideal moment, the extraterrestrial bodyguard launches herself in a quick jump, ready to catch the beast in mid-flight. Someone congratulates the offensive from behind, making the main character look back totally lost with the situation. The young man suffers an absolute shock upon observing Seiyu stretched on the floor with a critical injury to her chest. Agonized by the scary picture, he runs to his friend, yelling her name with all the strength of his lungs. Holding the girl's bloodied figure, the student begs her to resist, while Shiho catches the space slime in the background scene. In a rush, he stems the injury using his clothing, however. He enters despair, noticing that the blood flow doesn't cease in any way. With teary eyes, the human cries, warning that his friend will lose her life before the rescue appears, begging for that same previous healing spell. Squeezing the parasite, the space warrior clarifies calmly that passing the petrification force of her world is too risky. She walks to the two on the ground, warning that the earthling friend's organism very possibly would burst like a balloon if they tried to heal her by force. The extraterrestrial specifies that normal organisms are excessively weak to endure the pressure, and that he only didn't die because he holds primordial energy. Squeezing the trapped being with vigor, the protector confesses being amazed that he is already able to control this insane force. Filled with rage at the banal response, the boy yells that he doesn't give a damn about this cursed energy he never requested. Staring at the friend and the unconscious adversaries, he confesses that he never wanted all this tragedy to happen. Overcome by remorse and melancholy, the young man cries, revealing that, although he suffered at the hands of the delinquents, he didn't desire them to die. The space fighter sets the arrogant posture aside, looking at the boy with amazement at that true compassion. However, breaking the delicate climate, thick dark appendages enter the establishment, breaking the window glass with brutality. The high-pitched noise of police cars starts to echo through the ways, attracting the focus of those present inside the restaurant. Abruptly, the main entrance is destroyed by a ridiculous number of appendages that resemble strands of hair. Firm steps crush the oddities against the floor, while a woman's voice concludes that this degree of devastation has an evident reason. The new person adjusts the dark lenses on her face, ensuring with firmness that this could only be the work of beings from another planet. Adopting a flashy posture, a fake policewoman enters the destroyed location, showing off personality. Quite excited by the confusion, the woman points her finger, celebrating that she hit the jackpot by bumping into two targets in one go. Disoriented with the extravagant entry, the student asks, stumbling, if she integrates the planet's defense team. Exhibiting a giant smile, the supposed agent attests the affirmation, however warns in a sarcastic tone that this is just a false cover. Lowering the lenses to see with more clarity, the intruder fixes her look on the boy, identifying him as the celebrated earthling of the celestial rumors. Without any prior warning, the trapped invader tries a stealth attack in the direction of the mysterious woman of the law. The uniformed agent defends the lunge using an emerald force field, letting out a muffled scream of amazement. Using the enemy's dark matter like a lash, Shiho exhibits a lethal smile, demonstrating gratitude for not needing to hunt the camouflage threats. Noticing the will to kill, the invader raises her palms in a sign of surrender, asking for tranquility and claiming she only obeys orders. Overcome by primitive wrath, Shiho starts the attack with brutality and asks if the directive is to murder the one she protects. In the face of the furious aggression, the space agent raises her palm calmly in order to push the attack away with her personal magic. The bodyguard's violent offensive is stopped immediately by an absolutely impassable green energy force field. Emanating peace, the officer asks the warrior to take a breath and calm down, leaving the extraterrestrial without understanding the infallible defense. In the following fraction of a second, an overwhelming attractive force knocks Shiho to her knees on the broken floor without her being able to defend herself. Under the sudden effect of the magic weight, the dark matter slips from the young woman's hand and falls lifeless exactly in front of both. Cracking the cement floor with extreme brutality, a dark and colossal appendage emerges from the bowels of the building. Frightened by the mortal beast appearing out of nowhere, Amamiya screams, immobilized by an authentic terror. The officer recoils politely in front of the colossal being, greeting with formality the special supervisor elite of the Galactic Union. The boy stares at the pillar of darkness rising majestically in front of him, frozen in front of the level of insanity of that oppressive figure. Dominating the whole location with her macabre roots, the creature determines with an imposing voice that everyone has permission to lift their head. Surrounded by the chains of darkness, the host invaders tremble with fear while the voice blames them for causing that useless confusion. Letting out a sigh of pure annoyance, the fake policewoman rests her hand on her forehead and asks if the troublemakers forgot completely about the universal rules. Changing the relaxed tone for a hidden threat, she reiterates that Earth is a confidential area with rigorous limitations. Extending her finger to accuse, the woman determines that the location works only for research, leading the parasites to crawl, begging for mercy. Unable to understand a single word of the space language, the student concludes shocked that the lethal beasts are humiliating themselves out of panic. The woman in uniform smiles macabrely, simulating heeding the bad justifications of the ridiculous beast regarding seeking harmony in the cosmos. Echoing the word peace with complete disdain, the mortal being raises its annihilating appendage over the fearful parasite. The fake policewoman takes a convinced step forward, emanating a presence of irrevocable command through the ruined room. Looking at the scared monster, she asks in a cold tone of voice, who is it that gave authorization for it to act on its own on the planet? In a fraction of a second, the dark knife pierces the alien matter without demonstrating compassion, drawing a high-pitched scream of suffering from the target. The agent's face acquires a cruel coldness behind the dark glasses, revealing total absence of pity for the creature condemned to death. Grinding the monster's figure until purple blood gushes to all sides, the figure of authority declares that the scum only desired to steal the power. The obliterated fragments of the monster dirty the broken floor, evidencing the fatal and unquestionable force of the law of space. Changing behavior at the same time, the woman opens a kind smile and salutes, informing that the penalty was applied successfully. Trembling all over, Amamiya stammers, terrified, asking himself if she indeed killed the beast without batting an eye. Walking slowly in the direction of the student thrown on the ground, she attests to the murder informally and calls him a singular human. With a loud snap of fingers, the leader makes all the dark magic strings that compress the surroundings of the establishment disappear. Lifting the boy's jaw with sarcastic subtlety, she reflects out loud on what would be the most adequate destiny for that pathetic existence at the moment. Staring at the vulnerable prey, the galactic official confesses that that was the ideal instant to fulfill what she was ordered to do and wipe him definitively from space. An immersion into the roots of the origin of the universe shows that the desired primordial force emerged from the catastrophic glow of the Big Bang itself in the cosmos. Such supreme energy was split into two singular portions, in which the first turned into the light that creates life, and the second into the deep darkness. Throughout countless eras, both energies conserved the exact tuning and maintained the stability of the cosmos until an alteration occurred. Consumed by greed, a being stole the dark force secretly with the objective of obtaining even more universal dominion. Disseminating disorder and annihilation, the defector provoked a great armed conflict until he was finally arrested and killed by the Galactic Union. In order to prevent new tragedies, the institution concluded that the dark matter had to be suppressed forever. In this way, the contemporary administration of the Union was created in the middle of the cosmos to lead the stellar clusters and guard the societies. They chose extremely trained controllers and tasked them with watching continuously over all known stellar systems. Directing her attention to Earth, the commander with countless eyes informs Leet that the scary dark energy ended up awakening in those parts. The Supreme Leader determines that the terrestrial inhabitant who holds this dangerous force needs to be located as fast as possible. Drinking her drink calmly, the policewoman hears that the charge needs to be concluded without committing any serious slip. The central directive is to murder the prey before its development is completed, and it wakes its mortal force against the equilibrium of space. The leader emphasizes that, in the condition of special rank supervisor, the policewoman has capacity to spare to liquidate the issue quickly. Without exposing great feelings, Leet limits herself to continue taking her drink, while she listens to the heartless commands through the luminous device in the darkened room. The voice of command brings to light that 1,000 years have already gone by since the fighter ended up banished to that completely barbaric world. Immediately after, the superior figure ensures that in case she finishes the charge and eliminates the boy, she will finally be able to return to her home. Returning to the scenario of the broken restaurant, the policewoman grabs Hashizora's chin, attesting that he is the famous singular human. Staring at the young man from very close, the official says perversely that that would be the ideal opportunity to kill him definitively. Showing a malicious smile, she declares that she would be capable of performing the elimination directive in that exact location without any difficulty. Absolutely desperate with the fatal risk, Hashizora cries, begging the powerful policewoman to preserve the life of his injured colleagues. The military official breathes deeply, finding amusement, highlighting that even holding this insane energy inside himself, he continues to behave like a very vulnerable human. In the meantime, Seiyu continues fallen uncomfortably on the ground, bleeding a lot due to the absurdly critical injury in her own chest. Supporting his friend in his blood-stained arms, the main character warns that the fighter can absorb all his energy if she wishes to help. In compensation for the supreme energy he holds, the young man only requests that the authority rescues his acquaintances and all the inhabitants not involved in the disgrace. The military policewoman stares at the agonizing situation in absolute silence, digesting the unusual offer made by the boy who was in total panic. Arriving close to the target calmly, the woman places her hand on his head gently, preparing the ground to close the final agreement. With a much more serious posture, she asks if he truly understands the repercussions of passing on that lethal degree of universal potency. Trembling with fear and keeping his eyes closed, the student shakes his head, agreeing completely with the cruel conditions imposed. Content with the decided affirmative, Leet smiles maliciously and asks for an instant to execute the fatal procedure quickly. Quickly, the agent draws the young man into a deep kiss, being surrounded immediately by an extremely radiant magical energy. Maintaining the link firmly, the alien informs that the boy's ancestral energy still hasn't bloomed completely in the universe. At this instant, a huge ball made of pure dark energy starts to be sucked abruptly directly from the luminous chest of the scared boy. Absorbing the dark force gradually, she assures that the kiss was the only viable way to manage to rip the unfinished power. Ending the magic link suddenly, the policewoman takes a step back, breathing heavily while she cleans her mouth and tries to endure the weight of what she just extracted. Exhibiting a secure smile on her face, she touches her own chest, noticing that that volume of space force was colossal. Performing a fast gesture, interlacing her glowing fingers, Leet declares, excited, that now they are fully prepared to act in the area. A giant burst of green-colored magic dominates the location, leaving the student incredibly surprised by the unexpected effect. Discharging without pity all the gathered force, the space policewoman yells out the authoritative directive to reverse the disorder of time. Giant ripples of emerald green brightness radiate from her athletic body, bathing the ruined environment with an indescribable visual potency. An intense glow explodes quickly from the middle of the broken establishment, totally blinding the vision of everyone who was in the area. On the outside part of the building, an immense dome of healing power involves the entire city block of the metropolis in a fraction of a second. Because of the surreal effect of the space spell, time goes backward immediately, restoring the vehicles and the damaged constructions on the street. Inside the newly restored environment, the patrons regain consciousness totally, without understanding what they were doing lying on the cleaned floor. Knocked down on the smooth floor next to them, Seiyu wakes up very disoriented, asking the reason for finding herself lying in the center of the location suddenly. As if in an authentic divine feat without explanation, the entire environment is remade impeccably without showing any sign of the violent fight. Enchanted by the wonderful conclusion, Hashizora places his hand on his friend's shoulder, emitting a long sigh of peace for not having witnessed her death. He notices with extreme relief that her lethal injuries disappeared entirely, as if they had never existed in the girl's flesh. The group's troublemakers look at each other absolutely stunned to notice that they don't have injuries, and that the environment doesn't present a single mark. Holding the red-haired girl up by her clothing collar, Leech shows the captured girl, ensuring she performed the boy's will. Walking calmly, the agent warns that unfortunately she isn't capable of taking the entire force until the instant the human reaches adulthood. The student cleans his face, embarrassed, while the policewoman details that, until then, she only has the ability to suck the power by opening small holes. Angry with the stolen kiss in front of her, Shiho throws a scathing look full of darkness and pure lethal instinct in the direction of the bespectacled woman. The policewoman of the cosmos raises her hand, continuing with the scary speech, indicating that she possesses a much faster solution to solve the dilemma. Suddenly, though, the girl from Misha grabs the official's outfit brutally, demanding that she not dare put her hand on the vulnerable boy. Leet turns her gaze, absolutely shocked by the unexpected daring of the small rival challenging her superior position in the place full of people. Drawing the opponent toward herself, Shiho declares through clenched teeth in a growling tone that she is the only holder of the divine right to guard her prey there. Unshakable in the face of the other's petulance, the policewoman delivers a strike with her leg to the redhead, assuring that she has another much easier way in her head. Hashizora is in a panic, yelling to stop the fight, while the authority stretches her finger, stating that she could just take his life. The extreme force of the defensive hit throws the galactic fighter directly against the establishment's cold floor quite brutally. Frightened by the possibility of a new disaster starting suddenly, the young man shrinks, locked, waiting in panic for the most tragic end that can exist in the fight. Upon not hearing any sound of an attack hitting his partner, he opens his vision slowly, coming across the unrelated agent stopped close to him. Knocked down on the smooth floor of the lounge, the fighter concentrates her look on the rival's leg, motionless in a peaceful and hostile way close to her face. Staggering forward suddenly, the space policewoman grumbles, annoyed that the sudden yank almost made her collide her face on the ground. Adjusting her body position with a shy smile, she murmurs to herself that she already fulfilled everything requested in the initial directive. However, without receiving any warning from her own organism, the agent collapses limp onto the upholstery of the quiet restaurant. The main character is totally perplexed to witness the woman of absurd force pass out suddenly, lying on the furniture like a dead weight. Staring at the knockdown and peaceful adversary, the space fighter details that the force of extraterrestrials diminishes gradually far from their planets. Observing the official's calm expression sleeping on the seat, she concludes that this unbeatable woman probably has already resided on our planet for quite some time. The redhead deduces naturally that, due to extreme weakness, performing a colossal healing spell exhausted the policewoman's vital forces totally. The agitation takes back control of the absolutely normal location, with those present behaving as if it were just one more routine afternoon of meals. Hashizora notices with enchantment and amazement that everyone there around resumed their routines perfectly after this extensive and tiring panic. Thrown on the polished floor right in the main passage, Boss Nanju wakes up confused, asking the reason for finding herself abandoned on the floor in that manner. The lackey gets up in a panic, stating without being able to assimilate that the gang was at the clinic moments before appearing in a mystical way in that illuminated environment. A polite clerk walks to them, asking the troublemakers to lower the volume, while the blonde girl demands explanations about the delirium occurring there. The main character rubs his own head, fatigued, noticing the heavy psychological disorientation aggravate itself with this senseless spectacle of oddities throughout the afternoon. Adopting an extreme posture without reflecting much, he grabs the space friend and his friend, concluding that escaping quickly is the only way out. In desperate flight through the illuminated courtyard in the crowded street, the student breathes with difficulty, asking God that no one appears to hunt them. Transporting the fainted fighter, Hashizora stares at the enigmatic woman, asking in thought what her real identity is. Absolutely fatigued by the crisis, he throws himself to the ground close to Seiyu and tries to assimilate what the intergalactic policewoman's strategy is. Observing the gang of delinquents being chased away by the location's team, the student notices that the policewoman healed absolutely everyone. The boy notices that the woman fixed the whole restaurant impeccably and that she didn't demonstrate any intent to hurt him, at least apparently. At a distant point, a worker goes to lead asleep at the table in order to inform that there is no permission to sleep on the restaurant's premises. The girl wakes up slowly, adjusting her dark lenses, while the attendant grumbles about the number of people passing out around the place. Giving a small, awkward laugh, the policewoman notices that she ended up falling asleep suddenly due to the immense lack of food. Fully restored from the fatigue, the official calls the attendant excitedly, warning that this time she will perform her order correctly. She asks for the absurd quantity of 5 bowls with breaded pork and 3 curry dishes all at once. Tasting the gigantic portion, the agent praises the cuisine, attesting that the terrestrial meal is unquestionably the tastiest that exists. At that moment, the landscape changes to the early morning, exhibiting the old portrait on the table, which evokes intense memories of what has already passed. The guy remembers his school times and wonders in thought if he isn't excessively similar to a person named Shiorisha. Walking along the silent street, Seiyu finally reaches the front of her residence, being escorted by the partner. The girl sits at the door in the dim light absolutely without energy, while a hidden figure approaches sneakily. A voice utters the girl's name in the dark, provoking a start in her, who turns to verify who it is. Without managing to understand for sure, Seiyu blinks, disoriented, upon hearing the known sound coming directly from her own house's door. The young girl's mother opens the entrance suddenly, provoking a huge bump in the daughter who is sitting in that place on the floor. The woman asks with apprehension the reason for the girl having remained disappeared until this hour, and why she was out there without company. The housewife calls the young girl inside just to shelter herself from the cold of the early morning. Watching the interaction from afar in the empty street, Hoshizora lets out a deep breath of complete relief upon attesting to the friend's safety. Already inside his own quarters, the student vents that he is fatigued while Shiho throws herself onto the bed, amazed by the soft sensation. He tries to grab her attention, demanding that the visitor not use the bed wearing those filthy clothes from the street. However, the guy notices right at that moment that the alien warrior is already in dreamland on top of the bed. The main character joins the clues, remembering the policewoman's warning about the fact that extraterrestrials stay without energy far from their planets. Understanding the scenario, the boy deduces that it is for this reason that his bodyguard also suffered a blackout and needs rest to recover her strength. Observing the calm face of the girl who sleeps, the guy questions why she exposes herself to so many risks to ensure his safety. The old promise made by his mother resonates in his thoughts, mentioning a miracle that would occur with the return of the meteor shower. Enveloped by the glow of the night sky, the human wonders if the warrior coming from space would be the miracle he waited for so much. In a chaotic and remote dream, an incandescent meteor falls brutally upon a totally devastated. Among the infernal ruins, the alien entity falls from the skies, surrounded by powerful cosmic detonations. The memory transforms, revealing the rocky and desolate landscape of the warrior's home planet. A hand loaded with energy manipulates the elements of the environment, creating a small luminous stone as an example. The instructor guides the children about the technique of crystallizing the elements around to generate meteors. She clarifies that this method is the same used by adults to convert their own bodies into impenetrable rock. Little Shiho observes the glittering magic with fixed eyes, taken by an intense enthusiasm. The teacher motivates the group, ensuring that any one of them will achieve this feat if they concentrate their elemental energy. One of the students closes his eyes, maintaining focus until managing to manifest a magic spark in the palm of his hand. The young man celebrates, radiant, upon noticing the success in creating his first shining stone. Quickly, the other classmates learn the technique, celebrating that the execution is much simpler than they foresaw. While the teacher congratulates the class for the progress, the little redhead remains apart at the back of the classroom trying to concentrate. Making an intense effort, the girl trembles in the attempt to invoke any signal of magic in her hands. Unconformable with her own difficulty, she lowers her head, admitting sadly that she cannot perform the exercise. The boy next to her manifests his own magic with disdain, just to show off in front of the others. The other children start to laugh and point, humiliating her for her inability to perform such a simple task. With cruelty, one of the classmates suggests that she isn't even from planet Misha, having been abandoned only with a registration number. Continuing with the provocations, the boy challenges her to create a meteor, in case she were really bothered. Deeply shaken by the cruel words, the little girl flees, crying through the technological streets of her world. She seeks refuge behind an immense rocky formation in a secluded place, to sob in silence. A little later, the benevolent instructor finds the student's hiding place and approaches with serenity. Welcoming the girl, the instructor caresses her head, assuring her that her power is perfectly normal. The woman consoles her, saying that everything will be simpler as she grows, making the little girl thank her for the received affection. Decided to honor such affection, the young alien dedicates herself to rigorous and solitary training, day after day. On a silent early morning, she maintains her exhausting routine of meditation on the summit of the stone mountain. The absolute silence of the alien desert serves as a scenario for the warrior's constant effort in learning. Upon concentrating all her vitality in the palms of her hands, an intense golden glow starts to acquire physical form. The effort is finally rewarded, and the girl celebrates with euphoria upon seeing the perfect magic stone float between her fingers. She holds the luminous object firmly, feeling for the first time the importance of her own achievement. Without wasting time, she runs in the direction of the instructor, calling her with screams. With a radiant smile, she repeats to herself that finally she obtained dominion over the elemental technique. However, her joy is interrupted suddenly when she stops on the path, taken by fear in front of what she sees. The scare is so intense that the created stone slips from her hands, falling and shattering on the dusty ground. Upon hearing terrifying sounds of destruction coming from outside the cave, the little girl enters a state of alert. Trembling intensely, the girl widens her eyes upon feeling the fatal danger approach quickly. Outside, the scenario is a true hell, with gigantic beasts reducing the city to ashes. One of these imposing monsters appears threateningly in front of the defenseless young girl. Confronted with imminent death, the girl loses her voice and freezes in terror, unable to flee. Without any mercy, the beast lifts its claws and delivers a lethal blow against the fragile child. A massive explosion of fire cuts through the environment, intercepting the attack before it could hit the fragile target. The heroic block generates an impact wave so strong that it throws the little girl far away. The student falls sitting on the firm ground, complaining of pain and trying to process the fact of having survived. Upon lifting her look quickly, the young girl identifies immediately the silhouette of the person who placed herself between her and the danger. The instructor appears, lifting a barrier of fire and containing the arm of the colossal creature alone. In tears and extremely confused, the little girl asks, desperate, what is happening. Turning her face calmly, the heroine calls the student by her identification code, with an affectionate tone. Upon concentrating luminous magic in her hand, the master orders the little girl to shelter herself until the threat is contained. Faced with the devastation around her, the little girl screams in deep despair, fallen in that apocalyptic scenario. Darkness involves the location, and the little girl asks for help, questioning if there is anyone well. Waking up with a start, the warrior already adult pants on the guy's bed, trying to recover from the nightmare. Still impacted by the painful memory, the alien understands that she dreamed of her dark past. She looks through the window, observing the night outside while trying to recover her calm after the scare. The affectionate memory of her instructor arises in her thoughts, and she asks silently that the woman guide her. Upon looking at the guy who sleeps tranquilly at her side, the redhead claims to have finally found him. With immense conviction, the fighter promises to protect that powerful human, regardless of the circumstances. The young woman reaffirms her solemn oath to keep him safe until the day of awakening arrives. In the middle of total darkness, the student runs desperate, trying to escape from a threatening voice that pursues him. Hashizora wakes up suddenly, panting because of the disturbing nightmare. Without warning, a monstrous shadow appears behind the human, demanding that he deliver his energy. Overcome by panic upon hearing the threat, the guy asks for help from his alien partner. He screams the warrior's name at the top of his lungs, in the hope of being rescued from that haunting. For his total surprise, the space policewoman appears out of nowhere, demonstrating much excitement early in the morning. With the huge scare, the guy loses his balance and falls backward, screaming terrified in his own bed. The supervisor approaches intimidatingly, demanding that her target deliver all his energy instantly. The guy's blood freezes and he remains static, staring at that macabre scene. The image of Seiyu arises floating, lifeless and covered in blood, blaming the friend for all that occurred. Completely horrified by the tragic vision, he whispers the friend's name while he takes his hands to his face. With a shadowy countenance and without her glasses, the galactic agent advances, demanding his power once again. The woman grabs the human with violence, ordering with screams that he deliver the primordial force immediately. In the middle of the panic, the protagonist screams intensely, waking up in fact in his illuminated bedroom. With accelerated heartbeats and heavy breathing, the human questions if it all didn't just pass as a delusion. He turns his face with tension and sees the alien partner sleeping serenely in the other bed. The warrior rests deeply, letting out a small snore oblivious to the guy's despair. Massaging his head, Hashizora concludes that the load of recent traumas is harming his sanity. Trying to calm himself, the student decides that he needs to leave the house to breathe a bit of fresh air. Moments later, the convenience store bell rings, indicating that the customer left after the purchases. Already on the street, the guy sits at the table and sighs, relieved, preparing to eat his morning snack. Taking advantage of the moment of tranquility, the young man reflects on how much he misses his common and peaceful routine. Taking a bite of the food, he hopes mentally that the bespectacled friend is safe at home. Suddenly, a mysterious figure dressed in gym clothes approaches the student's table silently. The space supervisor appears stretching herself, wearing a red sports outfit that molds her body. Taken by a new immense scare, the guy falls backward, knocking down the chair due to the sudden surprise. Staring at his fallen prey, the woman asks ironically why he is so desperate. Maintaining a calm tone, the official asks that he relax, ensuring she doesn't intend to devour him there on the street. A few minutes later, both walk along a dirt road very far from the urban area. The agent lets out a loud laugh, celebrating the sensation of feeling alive again after recovering her strength. Trying to understand the bizarre situation, the human questions if she consumed all his energy fighting monsters during the night. Drinking her tea in a relaxed way, the woman confirms the suspicion, remembering that eliminating invaders is her function. Crushing the plastic bottle with irritation, Leet grumbles, frustrated for having let one of the creatures escape. Walking through the field, the policewoman confesses that she failed by ignoring a lethal order, and that, for this reason, she cannot return home. Confused with such sudden kindness, the boy asks, stammering, why she simply didn't fulfill the mission of eliminating the target. Lowering her look with a nostalgic expression, the woman hesitates before explaining the true reason. Clenching her fist with enthusiasm, the agent declares she acted in that way only to challenge the Galactic Union. The student doesn't understand the response, while she warns that it would take days to explain all the political details of the situation. Exhibiting a greenish magical aura, the supervisor decrees that the guy will have to assume responsibility. Without alternative, the woman explains that she needs to find an alternative way to return to her planet. Hugging the target with excitement, Leet announces that the plan now is to build a spaceship using his energy and the redheads. The human asks tense what they must do now, but the official warns that, before everything, his power needs to be awakened. Revealing an ambitious and threatening look, she confesses she will need an immense amount of that primordial force. Pulling the boy's cheeks with force, the policewoman assures she will accompany him constantly to keep him alive until then. The protagonist's mind enters a collapse just imagining having to deal with two problematic aliens in his daily life. Desperate to escape that insane situation, the young man runs in a sprint, screaming that he doesn't need another cosmic bodyguard. The school bell rings through the courtyard, signaling the beginning of one more long day of classes. Gasping after the run, Amamiya opens the classroom door, relieved to have arrived in time. He notices the bespectacled friend sleeping on the desk and gets calmer upon knowing she is safe. A classmate enters bumping into things and asking for apologies for the delay, while the others question his absence on the previous day. Walking to his desk, the young man reflects pensively on the fact that the bullies didn't appear for classes today. Sitting in his place, the student reflects that the gang's injuries were healed yesterday and prays they didn't find monsters. An absolute silence takes over the room while the students stare confused at the person standing next to the blackboard. The sound of the chalk on the board calls everyone's attention to the new presence that just assumed the class. The student feels a chill upon recognizing the unmistakable figure that now leads the room. Wearing an elegant social outfit, the intergalactic policewoman presents herself, enthusiastic as the new teacher. Completely shocked by such audacity, the protagonist stands up with screams, demanding explanations about her presence there. The school principal reprimands the boy immediately, asking if he has some problem with the new employee. The rest of the class faces the boy with disapproval, complaining about the sudden scene and labeling him a weirdo. Cornered by the classmates' judgment, Hoshizora tries to understand why everyone acts in such a hostile way. The students accept the change of teacher with a strange naturalness, leaving the guy terrified with the idea of mental manipulation. Exhaling an emerald aura, the fake teacher waves happily, ensuring the year will be very productive. Defeated by the invader's influence, the human collapses in the chair, lamenting getting involved in so many space problems. Far from there, the broken window of a hospital room is stained with blood, while a female voice utters curses full of hatred. Leader Nanju appears dumped in a bed, all bandaged after the beating received in the restaurant battle. Biting her own finger until it bleeds from so much rage, the delinquent cries, lamenting always being in such a deplorable situation. The aggressor delivers a blow to Nanju's head, with a bottle, screaming irritated, and asking how many times he would need to order her to restock the drink. Kneeling on the floor, the girl covers her head, begging him to stop and complaining of an unbearable headache. With this, the scene returns to the dark hospital room, where her two sidekicks lie injured in the beds. The memory of the violent confrontation that destroyed the family restaurant invades the delinquent's bruised mind. Totally confused, the blonde touches her own head, trying to understand what kind of strange memories those are. Upon noticing the situation, she deduces that the creatures seem to retain the memories of the bodies they possess. Suddenly, the black parasite arises, forcing its entry through her mouth and suggesting they become a single being. The shadowy entity warns that the connection now will be distinct from when it used only the human's body as a host. Being invaded by force, Nanju widens her eyes while the monster promises that both will conquer that special power. With eyes shining in a sinister purple tone, the aberration ensures it will perform all the humans' wishes. Back to the present, the aggressor kicks the room door open, screaming the leader's name with fury. Staring at the girl fallen in the dim light, he calls her useless for skipping class just to stay eating. The individual advances with the bottle in hand, threatening to finish everyone right there without pity. Enveloped in a shadowy energy, the girl stands up slowly, murmuring that she will not allow that to occur. With a lethal smile and corrupted eyes, Nanju decrees with firmness that she will not let anything she wishes escape. At school, the sound of the chalk hitting the board attracts everyone's attention during the silent class. The space supervisor writes on the board, explaining that the location now operates under a rigorous dictatorship. Amamiya remains tense, aware of the absurdity of having an alien acting as a teacher in the room. With a confused expression, the guy asks himself how the situation reached that point so quickly. The agent hits the desk to call the student's attention, giving him a considerable scare. Exhibiting an ironic smile, the official asks if he understands how to survive under a rigid dictatorial regime. Cornered at his own desk, the protagonist swallows hard and repeats the word survive, visibly nervous. Maintaining the threatening posture, the woman warns that his only option is to obey orders without questioning. Clapping her hands with enthusiasm, she praises the boy's understanding and orders that he focus on the day's lesson, without distractions. Seiyu observes the scene from a distance, quite suspicious of the strange behavior of the new teacher. Ignoring the tension, the invader announces happily that the class will move on to the next topic of the subject. The student sighs exhausted, admitting that he never imagined aliens would infiltrate his school. He reflects that, at least, the woman doesn't seem to want to cause trouble and asks himself if he should have brought she. Far from there, the warrior wakes up suddenly in the bedroom, opening her eyes with a start and half disoriented. Totally unkempt, the redhead screams at the top of her lungs that she is dying of hunger in the empty bed. Rubbing her eyes, the alien grumbles that she slept too much for having remained without energy. Enthusiastic about the idea of eating, she calls for Amamiya, commenting that she wants omelet with rice very much. Looking around the illuminated bedroom, the visitor notices that the environment is silent and empty. Worried about the sudden disappearance, the fighter gets up in a rush, calling the protected guy's name through the whole house. She searches every corner of the residence in search of the boy, without success. Desperate in the living room, the space traveler screams for the student's name, afflicted. Pulling her own hair, the girl enters a panic upon concluding he went out to the street without warning. A deep frustration takes over the heroine, while she tries to process the implications of that situation. Trying to maintain serenity, the redhead extends her hand, decided to track the presence of that special power of his. Upon concentrating her investigative magic, the warrior's eyes shine with intense energy. A tracking wave is released in the environment, in the attempt to detect any signal left by the target. The spell fails miserably, leaving the alien shocked for not finding any clue. Without hesitating, she throws open the house door and runs hurriedly to the sidewalk, in search of the human. Traveling the street at high speed, the warrior tries to understand why she cannot detect the guy's energy. Running without a destination through the city, the heroine questions, afflicted, if the failure in her magic radar would be caused by hunger. Reevaluating the situation quickly, the fighter concludes, frustrated, that she should have recovered enough energy. With this, two children pass by talking about how the class ended earlier on that quiet day. The boy invites the classmate to eat pudding at his house, mentioning the snack kept in the fridge. The alien hears the conversation and decides right at that moment that she needs to check that school to find him. She focuses on her heavy footsteps on the asphalt, remembering that the protected guy tends to frequent that place. Standing at a busy intersection, the redhead gets lost, not knowing the exact direction of the school. A driver honks irritated, ordering her to get out of the middle of the street, calling her crazy. Suddenly, the heroine's alien senses fire upon detecting an extremely lethal presence nearby. Reacting to the danger, she propels herself with force, cracking the asphalt under her bare feet. The car brakes suddenly from the scare, while the traveler realizes she sensed something very shadowy around there. Taken by urgency, the warrior takes off in a sprint, warning that an anomaly is very close. Running quickly along the sidewalk, she focuses intensely on the black smoke that rises on the horizon. With a confused expression, the redhead finds it strange that evil energy doesn't look like Amamiya's. Upon arriving at the disaster street, the heroine stops suddenly, sensing an absurdly heavy atmosphere. Two women pass by running, terrified, bumping into the alien, who tries to understand the origin of the confusion. Turning the corner, the warrior remains perplexed, trying to understand what is occurring on the street. The terrifying vision of the tragedy makes the alien's eyes widen in shock and incredulity. The residential building is in flames, while the crowd despairs powerlessly in front of the location. A girl cries, holding her teddy bear and calling for her mother in the middle of the confusion. The space traveler freezes, assimilating the chaos and the intense heat of the fire in front of her. A traumatic memory resurfaces, showing shadowy monsters destroying her hometown. Returning to reality, firefighters run hurriedly to remove children from the location taken by the fire. The residents, cornered at the windows of the upper floors, beg for immediate help. The redhead lowers her face, feeling the weight of the painful memories of her training in childhood. The image of her former instructor saving her resurfaces as a strong emotional trigger. Without considering the own risk, the heroine jumps into the building, ignoring the shouts of warning. One of the firefighters orders the crazy girl to stop and return immediately, before it's too late. The people on the street are shocked, warning in panic that a girl just entered the fire hell. The uncontrollable fire consumes the hallway, creating a barrier of heat on the rescue path. Intense flames explode through the closed room, demonstrating the extreme danger faced by the ale. Cutting through the flames, Shiho emerges sliding out of the building while carrying a woman and a child. Watching the rescue, a woman in the crowd murmurs in shock without believing what she saw. The firefighter approaches, thanking her for the heroism, and asking if all the civilians were removed. Still gasping, the warrior shakes her head negatively, warning that the work didn't end. Trapped in the middle of the fire, Nanju remains on the ground while a threatening shadow approaches. Ignoring the firefighter's warnings, the redhead runs back into the burning hell. The interior of the apartment continues to be consumed by the destruction of the implacable flames. Surrounded by the heat, the delinquent leader stares at an old photograph being devoured by the fire. The shadowy entity celebrates in her mind, stating that finally they eliminated an important obstacle. Promising freedom, the parasite creature tries to calm the girl who still hesitates, scared. Guilty, the host laments, confessing that she never desired to reach such a tragic point. The evil presence demands that she not show weakness, remembering the goal of stealing that power. Pressing the victim's psychological, the anomaly reinforces that force was what she desired so much. Yielding to the shadowy influence, her eyes shine in a purple tone while she murmurs about the power. The sound of hurried footsteps echoes in the environment, attracting the attention of the possessed girl. With brute force, the blocked door is kicked, opening a path through the smoldering debris. Surprised, the villain freezes, trying to identify who invaded the room. The red-haired heroine emerges gasping between the smoke, leaving the parasite irritated with the unexpected appearance. The monster deduces that the protector tracked their whereabouts. Recovering her breath, the cosmic combatant smiles, relieved for arriving in time to perform the rescue. Suddenly, the traveler widens her eyes upon perceiving a dangerous detail in the victim in front of her. Pointing her finger, she recognizes the presence of the creature from the previous day. Feigning innocence, the blonde coughs, questioning what kind of invader story the girl is telling. The redhead drops her guard, believing that the human lost her memory after vomiting the monster in the diner. Taking advantage of the savior's hesitation, the girl forces a cough, simulating being on the edge of a collapse. Without thinking, the heroine supports the injured blonde on her shoulder, decreeing that they need to flee from there. The ceiling starts to give way dangerously, while the flames threaten to swallow them both. Already on the asphalt, paramedics run with the stretcher to assist the last victim. Exhausted, the alien cleans her face, complaining that she spent more energy than planned. The fatigue was amplified by an emotional slip, since the flames brought back traumas from the past. Even safe, the warrior touches her chest, certain that she sensed a scary threat in the building. Lying on the stretcher, the delinquent leader cries, calling for her parents desperately. The victim shrinks on the ground, crying and causing a scandal that moves the professionals around. Deceived by the acting, the heroine starts to cry, feeling sorry for the human. When no one watches, the parasite smiles cruelly, celebrating the success of the disguise. The protector's physical limit is reached, and she loses her balance, tripping on the street. The redhead collapses on the asphalt, scaring the firefighters who run to check her state. Maintaining the mask of victim, the blonde accompanies the movement, demanding that the savior be taken to the hospital. The face covered by fake tears hides the satisfaction for having manipulated the situation. The scenario changes to the emergency room, where the medical team runs to assist the victims. Lying on a bed, the warrior wakes up, letting out a light moan. Rubbing her eyes confused, she tries to recognize the environment and deduces she ran out of battery. The curtain is opened, revealing Nanju, who asks for apologies for the absence, justifying having visited her parents. With sympathy, the girl thanks her for the rescue that guaranteed the survival of her family. Feigning concern, the parasite asks if the savior feels pain. Before she responded, the redhead's stomach rumbles loudly, denouncing her hunger. Defeated by the appetite, the combatant confesses the brutal hunger, making the visitor offer to seek something. Without raising suspicion, the blonde leaves quickly, leaving the patient in the room. Alone, the heroine observes the girl's exit through the hall. Returning, the human hands her a chocolate bar, demanding that the patient eat. With friendly style, she explains that she bought the sweet from a machine in the hall. With eyes shining with happiness, the traveler accepts the snack, thanking her for the kindness. Chewing the chocolate, the alien praises the girl's kindness, without suspecting the bad intentions. Observing the opponent's naivety, the parasite evaluates her as a harmless fool. Crossing her legs, the villain tries to understand the reason for the rescue and asks herself what the heroine knows. With a calculating look, she evaluates each reaction to discover breaches in the plan. Taking the initiative, the blonde asks for permission, saying she needs to tell something important. Making drama, the host stammers, saying her recent memories seem like a confused nightmare. She narrates a tragic story about having fainted in the forest and woken up in the restaurant. In a panic, the shadowy consciousness screams in her mind, asking why she hands over the disguise. Cold, the leader orders mentally for the monster to shut up, since she needs to test the opponent. Resuming the theater, the young girl relates remembering a fight against someone identical to the red-haired warrior. The redhead stops chewing and approaches her face, staring at the human with suspicion. The intimidation makes the parasite sweat cold, fearing having gone too far. In an epiphany, the protector deduces that the monster's memories stuck in her mind. Talkative, the ET shoots all the chaotic events of the previous day in a summarized way. Hiding the sadistic smile, the villain celebrates for having tricked the heroine. The conversation is interrupted by a nurse, wanting to know if the patient feels pain. Preparing instruments, the professional warns that she needs to collect blood. The nurse asks the young girl to relax, while she positions the needle on the patient's resistant skin. To the doctor's shock, the needle bends against the skin without piercing anything. Perplexed, the professional stares at the several crooked syringes on the tray. Desperate, the woman blames a manufacturing defect and runs out to seek new needles. The blonde wonders why blood doesn't come out, until the redhead's stomach rumbles again. Ashamed by the noise, the traveler lowers her shoulders while the visitor stares at her surprised. The room door is closed quickly not to raise suspicions. Afterward, the nurse returns, asking for apologies and warning that they will redo the exam. Confused with the scenario, the professional stares at the empty stretcher, without understanding where the patient went. Far from there, Shiho bites a hamburger, killing the accumulated hunger. Sitting at the table, Nanju comments that the alien is too thin to eat so much. The blonde observes the companion chewing in a carefree way. With this, a sad memory shows the parents fighting, while little Nanju cried from hunger. The loneliness of the past haunts the girl's mind, curled in a dark corner. Abandonment marks the life of the young girl who remains sad and thrown outside. Suddenly, the voice of the parasite echoes in the host's mind, calling her attention to the present. The entity warns that it is not time to cry for the past, reinforcing that the target is the boy's power. The monster insinuates that the protector also wants to steal his strength, but Nanju affirms, irritated, that she has a plan. She ponders that the redhead is too strong and a direct fight would result in defeat. The creature agrees, fearing the galactic supervisor, and questions the tactic without the use of magic. With confidence, the delinquent decrees that the first mission is to distance the savior from Amamiya. Continuing the theater, the blonde vents that her family is a mess and that she wished they would disappear. The girl relates that perhaps for this reason she never ran away, confessing to having felt fear in the fire. With charm, the villain thanks for the rescue and proposes that they be friends. Surprised, the space traveler widens her eyes, letting the hamburger fall. Confused with the earthling term, the heroine questions if this friendship is something edible. The redhead murmurs, trying to associate the word with constant support in difficult moments. The image of her former teacher arises in her mind, bringing the warmth of who always protected her. Nanju extends her hand, asking the alien's name to firm that bond. With sympathy, the human presents herself as Nanju Nagi, waiting for the response. With emotion, the combatant holds the new friend's hands, revealing her earthly name. Inside, the parasite pretends joy, confirming the partnership with the opponent. Shiho overflows with happiness, feeling that she conquered her first friendship on Earth. Meanwhile at school, the new space teacher announces that final exams will be next. Seiyu complains that was the first class, but the agent ensures everyone will get a top grade. Doing an exaggerated pose, the supervisor brags about having centuries of experience in teaching. Ignoring the students' doubts, Teacher Leet ensures there are no problems with the test content. The protagonist reflects that he needs to focus on his studies and cannot let himself be carried away by that alien madness. A nostalgic memory arises, showing the time when he watched the stars with his mother. That moment ended on the day the mother figure disappeared without leaving traces. Since then, his father travels a lot for work, which made the guy believe his mother also researched the sky. He swears mentally that he needs to get into an astronomy university to seek his destiny. The boy understands that this study is his only chance to reunite with his lost mother. After saying goodbye, the agent sends everyone home to study, giving the student a considerable scare. The young man walks through the hallways relieved, happy that no disaster occurred during the period. Holding his backpack, he confesses that all that silence generates an absurd nervousness. The guy wonders if the red-haired protector is really quiet at home without causing confusion. Saya's voice interrupts his thoughts in the hall. The young girl adjusts her glasses and asks shyly if he would like to study with her. Full of hope and blushing, the friend awaits the response. The protagonist is surprised, but soon understands the situation. The boy accepts the proposal with a light countenance, knowing he needs to focus on the future. On the way, the friend is stunned by the story of the space policewoman and the events of the previous day. She questions if it is worth focusing on studies in the middle of so much madness, but the friend agrees. With a firm posture, the young man guarantees that even with bizarre things, their reality remains the same. He decrees that he will get into college, exciting the classmate, who promises to do her best. The student asks about the redhead's whereabouts, and the boy confesses to having left her at home. Astonished, the human remembers that the protector swore never to leave the protected guy's side. At the traffic light, Asura explains he took advantage of the guest's sleep to escape on the sly. The classmate imagines the traveler wearing the boy's blouse and questions if it is safe for the two to share the house. Hiding the jealousy, the bespectacled girl murmurs that she understood the situation and lowers her face, frustrated. To break the ice, the friend asks about the father, but the student disguises, saying he continues traveling. Worried, the nerd suggests they study at the guy's house instead of the library. Scratching his face, the boy theorizes that the invaders must be hidden. Seiyu enters a panic, demanding responsibility from her friend and warning that the alien would never stay quiet waiting. Aware of the danger, the protagonist agrees, admitting the heroine must have caused some chaos. He reflects that in practice, the crazy figure of his partner demanding food scares him. Hashizora points to the smoke on the horizon, questioning if it is a real fire. Seiyu recognizes the location and concludes, incredulous, that the fire destroys the delinquent's building. Overcome by rancor, the young girl murmurs that the bully deserved the tragedy. Contrary to his friend's hatred, the guy laments, remembering that the blonde didn't always act in a despicable way. A memory shows Nanju smiling and waving happily in a distant past. Noticing the boy's hesitation, the human disguises the frustration, grumbling that everything is strange. Irritated, she squeezes her skirt, frustrated for him forgiving who made his life a hell. The classmate pulls the friend's arm with force, speeding up the pace to go far away from there. As if by magic, Shiho jumps, showing off energy and yelling the protected guy's name with longing. The impact is so strong that Hashizora almost loses his balance upon being crushed by the euphoric hug. The redhead rubs her face on him, happy for having gone straight home as he had ordered. Surprised by the obedience, the human blushes, asking for space while trying to understand who gave such an order. Forcing naturalness, Seiyu greets the rival while the alien responds in a friendly way, calling her a friend. In the face of the protector's excitement, the protagonist only comments that she seems to be in a great mood. Radiant, Shiho comments that she just made a new friendship. Surprised, Seiyu stops walking and asks who the person in question is. At this instant, Nanju arises from the shower wearing only a towel and greets Amamiya. The hallway is taken by a climate of amazement, leaving both students motionless. In absolute despair, the protagonist points to the ex-enemy and yells her name. Proud, the redhead presents the new classmate and affirms that she already expelled the alien. Still trembling with the unusual situation, the nerd stammers, trying to confirm the young woman's identity. Seiyu remembers that the warrior is unable to distinguish human beings from invaders. The traveler murmurs something confused, while the hostess observes the conversation's tension. Interpreting an impeccable role, Nanju cries upon saying she lost her home and has nowhere to go. Sensitized, the protector agrees that it is a duty of friends to shelter helpless earthlings. Taking advantage of the emotional fragility, the ex-delinquent approaches the resident's owner. She arrives close to the guy and in a seductive tone requests that he give her a helping hand. Overcome by fury and jealousy, the bespectacled friend warns that she was already there before. Immediately, Seiyu pushes Amamiya, cutting the interaction between the two. Assuming control, the student reminds the classmate about the commitment to study together. Irritated, the guest lifts her head ready to face the inconvenient nerd. However, Seiyu retorts saying that dedicated students focus on tests and entering university. Staring at the competition, Nanju understands perfectly what the human intends. Changing strategy, she turns her back and decides that she will also be part of the study group. Exhaling a shadowy and subtle presence, the girl warns that she will be staying there for a while. The absurd revelation leaves the students perplexed in the middle of the hall. On that agitated afternoon, the pair's scream echoes outside the house. Already installed, the group tries to concentrate on the studies, while the intruder uses the cell phone. The continuous noise bothers the protagonist and his friend, who desired to study in peace. Despising the tension, the ex-delinquent laughs loudly upon watching an online video. Tired of the lack of consideration, the host orders silence in case she isn't going to study. Mocking, the girl shows a prank on the screen, claiming she is learning about the world. Losing patience, the bespectacled student gets up and responds with a threatening tone. The provoker blinks confused, without understanding the sudden change of the studious girl. Without warning, Seiyu goes up to her and squeezes the enemy's cheeks with force and rage. Pulling her face, the nerd demands to know why so much meddling. Desperate, the student asks that his friend release the invading guest. Intervening, the warrior defends the new friend, which makes the situation even more delicate. The protector asks for respect, highlighting that the bruised girl is important to the human. Hearing that, the fake friend lowers her face and maintains a calculating look. Pressed by the group, the studious student lets go of the girl's face and moves away dissatisfied. With the climate ruined, Seiyu leaves and the friend offers to escort her. Excited, the traveler invites the classmate, who refuses due to fatigue. Before leaving, the protagonist warns the invader not to destroy his house. Upon walking through the night, Seiyu reflects silently about the troubled past of the two. Although she knows the ex-delinquent studied with him, the cause of the bullying remains an enigma. Remembering, the bespectacled student remembers with affection when they met. In that time, a young Amamiya shared his snack kindly with the girl who was crying. That act of kindness in the park made her fall deeply in love. The passage of time reveals that he was the first to demonstrate concern for her. In a school memory, the guy walks tranquilly holding his books. Suddenly, a sweet Nanju appears asking where he is going. Smiling, the girl says she is going to the library and decides to accompany him. The scene cuts to the library's silence, where both study under the distant look of Seiyu. Trying to converse, the popular girl asks about his book's content. Exhibiting the cell phone, she tries to relate the book's astronomy to the zodiac signs. Faithful to his logic, the protagonist adjusts his glasses and denies any scientific basis in the predictions. He points out errors in the constellations, which leaves the companion frustrated. Without a way to deal with the correction, she turns her face and grumbles that the subject was another. Resuming the focus, Nanju asks, intrigued, why he lives focused on the stars. The guy reveals his dream, but is soon silenced by another student in the local. Unconformable with the interruption, the student pouts and stares at the guy closely. Ignoring the silence, she approaches and demands to know one more thing. In a whisper, she asks in which high school he intends to study. The scholar names an elite institution, surprising her by the difficulty of access. With a confident smile, he guarantees that that is essential for his dream. The guy's determination leaves the young admirer enchanted and silent. Moved, she makes an important decision about her future. Since then, the girl started studying at dawn, intensely and alone. Time passes and she opens an envelope, trembling with nervousness. An immense joy takes over her upon confirming her approval in the selection. With the document in hand, she celebrates the chance to finally stay close to him. The joy is cruelly interrupted when a male hand burns her certificate. On the house floor, the student cries while her alcoholic father mocks her effort. The mother appears in tears, blaming the daughter for the institution's costs. Surprisingly, the mother hands over some of money and asks for calm. With a bruised face, the woman smiles and promises to pay whatever is necessary. In a burst of pain, the lady states that enduring the beatings will pay for the tuition. In despair, Nanju grabs the stained money and screams that she can't take it anymore. At this moment, she extends her hand mentally, begging for Amamiya's comfort. The illusion breaks upon seeing him smiling gently at another person. Dazed, the girl widens her eyes without understanding the scene. Seeing them together, the rejected one asks who the bespectacled girl is. She notices that the guy seems much happier upon smiling at the other. Overcome by jealousy and putting on makeup, she gets irritated that he never smiled like that at her. Unconformable, Nanju convinces herself that she is much more beautiful than the rival. Taking out her frustration, she bumps on purpose into the newcomer in the hall. Without empathy, the aggressor steps heavily on the book that fell on the ground. With fake delicacy, the bully asks for apologies and pretends it was an accident. Seiyu tries to recover the material, while the rival nurtures a deep hatred for her. She bites her thumb with rage and swears she will never forgive the meddling classmate. Isolated in the room, she is surprised by mean-looking students. The group of delinquents praises her beauty and proposes a friendship. Staring at them, Nanju sees the perfect chance to put her plan into practice. With a macabre smile, she reveals her name and seals an evil pact. Later, she corners Seiyu in an alley, who cries without understanding the persecution. Laughing, the blonde says the newcomer is thinking too much of herself. With a hostile look, the aggressor accuses her of hitting on the guys despite her appearance. The delinquents laugh, but a desperate scream echoes, calling for the victim. Amamiya arrives running and interrupts the group's cowardly attack. Gasping, he explains he came to look for her since she didn't appear at the meeting. Upon recognizing the girl, he asks astonished what she is doing with those outcasts. Without giving a chance for an answer, one of the criminals orders the nerd to approach. On the floor, the protagonist is beaten while the ex-delinquent narrates her fall. The aggressor celebrates the beating, while Nanju reflects on her only certainty. With an empty look, the blonde blames Seiyu silently for all the disgrace. The nerd cries, while the enemy affirms that everything would be different without her. Nanju imagines a perfect future with the protagonist, in case the newcomer disappeared. Obsessed, she decrees that the guy is just hers and will not tolerate obstacles. Enveloped by the parasite's energy, she affirms that she will not let the red-haired alien steal him. Lying on the guy's bed, she watches the meteor shower. Far from there, a boot crushes violently an alien monstrosity. The galactic policewoman complains about the invasion of space junk on Earth. Adjusting her glasses, the supervisor grumbles that dealing with those insects is laborious. Suddenly, an intense glow in the sky captures the agent's attention. Smiling, the policewoman concludes that a powerful threat just arrived. The weekend arrives, Amamiya wakes up celebrating the deserved day off. Taking advantage of the morning light, he thinks finally having a moment of rest. The dream turns into a nightmare upon noticing the two girls crushing him on the bed. Jumping out of bed, he demands to know how they ended up there. Sleepy, the blonde invents she was afraid of sleeping alone on the sofa. Without sense, the redhead alien laughs and says she just joined the two. Shaking the guy, the combatant demands he prepare the breakfast. Surprising him, Nanju gets up and offers herself to cook. Gently, the blonde argues that paying with food is the minimum, since she lives there for free. Quickly, the skillful young girl serves a spread and attractive table. With appetite, Shiho vibrates and the guy praises the guest's skills. A sad memory arises, but Nanju disguises, saying she cooks since she was a child. The warrior attacks the food ferociously, praising the earthly taste. Upon tasting, the boy approves the seasoning and reflects on the time without eating home cooking. The cook smiles until the protagonist notices something important on the table. Seeing the amount of fried foods, he asks where so many expensive ingredients came from. The scene cuts to the fridge, which was totally emptied. With only a green onion in hand, the student pales with the financial disaster. Desperate, he laments that his father's allowance will still take a while. Accepting the loss, the guy invites the redhead for them to go to the market. Helpful, the ex-delinquent offers herself to accompany and help with the expenses. The host thanks stammering, finding the sudden docility of the old villain strain. Drinking calmly, the blonde celebrates mentally for being close to her target. Savoring the tea, she feels that her wishes are becoming reality. However, the parasite's voice demands they steal the power before the Galactic Union. The entity promises to eliminate the alien protector, so she stays with the guy. Time later, the trio finally arrives at the supermarket for the shopping. Along the aisles, the warrior from Misha is fascinated by terrestrial products. Focused on saving, the protagonist checks the list to take advantage of the promotions. Without sense, the redhead tries to bite a package, forcing the guy to give her a scolding. The loudspeaker warning interrupts everyone's distraction. The announcement of a flash offer makes the guy go into a panic not to lose the chance. Shooting through the market, Amamiya leaves the girls behind. Trying to follow him, the space traveler is pushed by a customer. Irritated, the heroine transforms her hand into a claw, ready to attack the earthling. Hashizora's warning remembers the absolute rule, not to hurt anyone without certainty. Holding the rage, the warrior dissipates the magic but feels a sudden dizziness. Losing strength, the alien faints in the middle of the aisle. Worried, Amamiya looks back and calls for the blonde girl. Supporting the fainted alien, Nanju asks, calculating if they are friends. The redhead confirms grog. Taking advantage of the fragility, the host plans to inject her evil energy into her to assume control. The parasite remembers, frustrated, the humiliating beating she took from the heroine. Observing the lowered guard, the ex-delinquent prepares the perfect bait. With her face close, the blonde advances while the traveler murmurs the friend's name. Without delay, the villain kisses the warrior and transfers her corrupted essence. The shadowy energy invades the protector, who widens her eyes upon noticing the true intention. The alien gives in and passes out, while the parasite recedes satisfied with the conclusion. Holding the unconscious girl, the host listens to the entity celebrate the success of the plan. Far from there, the boy sighs relieved upon carrying the lunch boxes. Content with the economy, the student walks skipping. Calculating the food's durability, he stops confused upon finding the blonde. With the weight of the purchases, he asks why she is only and where the redhead is. Feigning despair, the liar points far away and invents that the alien ran out running after food. In a panic, the guy accepts the parasite's suggestion for them to look for the missing one together. The search takes the human to the dark stockroom where he peeks suspiciously. Between the shelves, the boy questions if his partner really hid there. While he calls for the redhead, shadowy tentacles sprout behind him silently. Immobilized, the student is captured while the villain's voice celebrates the victory. Revealing her aura, Nanju controls the dark threads and warns that the moment arrived. With a sadistic smile, the host decrees that now the human belongs to her. In a park, the sound of a can being opened breaks the silence. The space supervisor drinks something cold, taking advantage of the day off. Sitting, she sighs satisfied, praising the pleasure of drinking outdoors. Reflecting on the fatigue, she is interrupted by a threatening voice in the dark. A white-haired woman arises, criticizing the easy life the agent leads there. The policewoman recognizes the presence of the unwanted visit from the previous night. Staring at Pommel, the supervisor hears the charging regarding the noncompliance with the extermination orders. With furious eyes, the newcomer questions if the living with Earthlings affected the official's mind. Analyzing the betrayal, the invader decrees that she will eliminate Earth and the rebel colleague. Back to the stockroom, the protagonist moans, complaining that the bindings suffocate him. Through peripheral vision, the boy tries to understand if that is the work of the ex-delinquent. Staring at the macabre smile, he is shocked upon remembering the parasite had been expelled. A childhood memory invades his mind, showing the blonde playing hide-and-seek. In the memory, the girl finds his hiding place, showing off pure joy. The proud child showed she knew every step of the friend, being radiant in that era. Time advanced to school, where the student always greeted him warmly. He remembers she was friendly, always starting conversation about the library. The happy image contrasts with the shadowy phase in which she ignored him, generating doubts about the cause. Trapped, the student analyzes the situation, considering a sad possibility about the villain. He admits to having ignored the reality, focusing only on the gentle version he wanted to see. The protagonist laments never having sought the real motive of the transformation, accepting only that she worsened. Consumed by guilt, he notices that he ignored the old friend's pain for being surrounded by new companions. The vision of the ex-delinquent bruised and alone in the hallway weighs on his conscience. He concludes that, if he had extended his hand before, she would never have been corrupted. With remorse, the human asks for sincere apologies for the negligence that destroyed her life. The request for forgiveness breaks the parasite's sadistic posture, leaving her confused. Suddenly, the girl possessed takes her hands to her head, suffering with an acute pain. The evil aura oscillates, and the villain gets scared upon sensing an immeasurable power awakening. Taking advantage of the distraction, the boy tries to free himself, but freezes upon sensing an oppressive energy. Far from there, Pommel releases a blue aura, proving to be a superior threat. With destructive magic in her hands, the new enemy says that disobedience will cost the official her job. Without fear, Leet crushes the empty can, demonstrating contempt for galactic hierarchy. Under the pole light, the terrestrial agent raises her hand, preparing a clear response. With human delicacy, the official shows her middle finger and declares her freedom. The white-haired alien blinks confused, without understanding the obscene gesture. Ignoring the language barrier, the invader concludes that the rebel chose to die rather than submit. Shooting blue energy, the executioner sentences the immediate annihilation of the ex-colleague. Bathed by the lethal light, the supervisor lowers her head, awaiting the impact. An explosion consumes the scenario, while Pommelhout recognizes the level of force of the opponent. Justifying the attack, the alien says she needed to erase the traitor before the temporal reversal. With teleportation, Leet arises behind the executioner and delivers a powerful punch. The aggressor staggers, incredulous that the rebel survived the shot. Recovering the posture, the invader invokes cosmic electricity, promising to take the combat seriously. She advances with a frontal burst, but the supervisor slides and mocks the slowness of the blow. Humiliated, Pommel grunts with frustration upon missing again. At a safe distance, the irritated invader asks what the rebel's true plan is. Confident, the policewoman exalts her power to rewind time to create breaches. The assassin sentences that tricks are useless in front of the abyssal difference of magic reserve. About to erase the rival's smile, she is interrupted by a mocking laugh. Laughing at the nervousness, Leet points out how pathetic the High Command is, panicked with the loss of energy. Invoking emerald magic, the defender warns that the Union's effort is useless. The scene reveals the red-haired heroine protecting the human, proving to be the ace up her sleeve. The invader realizes, scared, that it was the redhead who defeated the previous emissary. The Platinum One affirms that the Union travels between systems using technology stolen from Misha. In sequence, she questions what would happen if they simply blew up Earth. She foresees that the debris would spread and the target would flee in the chaos, escaping again. Leet agrees, admitting that pursuing someone through space would be exhausting. With this, the supervisor understands why she sensed another presence, close to the primordial energy. Pommel decides to eliminate the alien protector first, while the policewoman affirms that the executioner will be the next. Far from there, Amamiya continues trapped in the dark cocoon in the stockroom. The possessed leader celebrates, ensuring the boy will be hers after the service. Planning to throw the human into space, she is interrupted by a metallic noise. Irritated, Nanju demands to know who dares hinder her. The aliens invade the warehouse, and the Platinum One decrees that the blonde is not from Misha. Sensing the crushing energy, the parasite trembles upon recognizing the name of the executioner Pomelhout. Pomel mocks the creature and decides to verify what kind of primitive beast that is. Without effort, she grabs the girl by the collar to analyze the monster. Staring at the prey, she deduces it to be a parasite specialized in mental manipulation. The executioner exposes the creature as criminal level 1, finding it pathetic the use of a human. Holding the prey, the woman senses the primordial power coming from inside the cocoon. Observing the prison, the assassin questions ironically if the work was the parasite's job. With her eyes shining, Pomel demands the creature's objective, leaving Nanju paralyzed. Releasing the blonde, the invader decrees that any genius plan ends with her arrival. With a lethal smile, she thanks the monster for having tied the target, facilitating the extermination. The possessed human widens her eyes upon hearing the word extermination. The assassin invokes blue magic, and the girl notices that she will kill Amamiya. Desperate, Nanju asks if she doesn't want the force for herself. The parasite warns that disobeying is death. Seeing the lethal light, the young girl laments the waste of power in the student's life. The monster decrees that it is too late and that the executioner will kill everyone who resists. Seeing the lethal light, the young woman laments the waste of power in the student's life. The boy's gentle smile invades her mind, with the reality of his imminent death. Contrarily to the domain, the girl forces her body and swears not to allow such a tragedy. Breaking the control, Nanju warns that she now commands herself. The blonde advances against the magic ray, refusing that mockery while the attack approaches. Trapped, Amamiya is stunned to hear the old classmate's voice denying the tragic end. With courage, the human throws herself in front of the explosion, screaming for them to stop. Hearing the sacrifice, the student clenches his fists with fury inside the prison. Opening her arms as a shield, Nanju throws herself in front of the explosion, screaming for them to stop. The scenario changes to a cold storage room, where a hand tries to reach a shelf. A popsicle falls on Shiho's head, making her groan upon waking up. Thrown on the cold ground, the heroine trembles from cold, trying to understand the environment. The redhead warrior sits on the frozen ground, asking where she ended up. Rubbing her head, she grumbles, holding the ice cream that woke her up. A shadowy flash invades her mind, showing the ex-delinquent with purple aura. Fallen, the combatant remembers the bizarre kiss she received at the market. The memory shows Nanju dragging her fainted body to the freezer. Joining the pieces, the redhead gets up, indignant upon noting the human turned into a monster. Her eyes widen, trying to understand when the enemy regained the powers. The warrior's mind goes over the lying posture of the parasite, repeating the doubt. The image of the blonde at the hospital returns, showing it was all a theater. The memory of the scene with the towel confirms the manipulation. Without understanding the plan, the redhead sits, curious about why she wasn't killed. The extreme cold forces the traveler to sneeze, generating a spark of magic fire. Hugging her own legs, she complains of the cold and deduces being without energy. Looking around, the heroine pays attention to the amount of sweet stock. Accepting the option, she opens the popsicle, deciding to use it as a battery. With shining eyes, she bites the sweet, feeling the sugar recharge her forces. From the outside, a worker pushes a cart, relieved by the end of the shift. He unlocks the freezer door, commenting about the stock of ice cream. Upon opening, the light illuminates the alien sitting in the middle of the room. The redhead is caught eating, and the stalker screams in terror. The worker falls sitting, and the girl gets up with a jump, scared by the scream. Celebrating the luck, the heroine takes off, saying she preferred saving magic to breaking the wall. Passing by the worker, the traveler warns she is recharged and needs to act. Her footsteps echo through the market while she flees and leaves the worker static. Focused on saving the protected guy, the combatant concludes that the blonde never gave up on him. The memory of the request for friendship returns, and she accepts that that was a farce. At the warehouse, Nanju keeps her arms open, blocking the cocoon while yelling for the platinum one to stop. Without compassion, the assassin hits the human with the ray, drawing a scream of agony. The cosmic impact crushes the possessed young woman, and she moans while the supervisor observes. The blue explosion demonstrates the level of lethal force sent to Earth. Smoking, the delinquent collapses on the concrete, murmuring the target's name. Miraculously, a redoubt of magic protection arises, surprising the invaders. The cocoon cracks, releasing intense rays, proving the awakening of the student's power. Ignoring the protection, the executioner cleans her hands, saying she neutralized the danger. Suddenly, the human gets up with a jump and advances yelling, surprising the assassin. Crying from hatred, the young girl advances while the parasite screams, unable to dominate the host. The monster concludes, panicked, that it never saw so much resistance. Nanju runs, promising to kill the enemy. Pomelhout points her finger, decreeing the elimination of the criminal and her host. The parasite despairs upon seeing the imminent attack. Nanju dodges the beam in the last second, noticing that she would be pierced. The executioner observes coldly, mocking that the girl crawled like a snake. Preparing more magic, the Platinum One warns that trying to face her is suicide. With a fulminant shot, the invader guarantees that trying to face her is suicide. A cloud of dust rises with the violent impact on the ground. Fallen, the blonde looks around, surprised for not having been hit. Shiho appears holding the girl, calling her name in a clumsy way. Seeing the scene, Pomelhout questions, irritated, how long the survivor of Misha was lying. The red-haired warrior fuses the enemy, demanding to know who she is. With authority, the woman presents herself as executioner of the Union and points out the blonde as a criminal. Maintaining the pose, the Platinum One focuses her target on the possessed girl. The official orders the heroine to retreat, threatening to kill her in case she insists. Without retreating, Shiho screams that she will never forgive her if she touches her friend. Hearing the defense, Nanju murmurs the savior's name, moved. The executioner laughs at the word friendship, mocking that the redhead seeks only power. With this, the parasite releases from the body of the girl, warning that she already extracted the energy. Exhibiting confidence, the warrior questions the monster's affirmation with irony. Invoking flames, she cuts the bureaucratic speech of the assassin about surrender. Pomelhout stops in the middle of the sentence, caught off guard by the Lun. Advancing like a flaming lightning, the alien reinforces that the human is her friend. The invader dodges, warning that the monster and the host are in an irreversible stage. Taking advantage of the opening, the Platinum One strikes back with a heavy blow to the heroine. Derailing on the ground, the heroine hears the rival decree the obliteration of the girl. Fallen, the combatant tries to argue desperately against the death sentence. Cold, the official raises the glowing hand, remembering the warning. Without pity, the executioner aims her magic to annihilate everyone. However, the arrogant expression changes to shock upon sensing primordial energy pulsing. Confirming the theory, the warrior opens a mischievous smile, mocking the opponent's confidence. The invader turns brusquely, panicked upon noticing that her previous attack didn't pierce the target. A purple glow explodes, tearing the cocoon of darkness with force. The girls cover their faces, while the blonde murmurs the guy's name, relieved. Breaking the bindings, the human arises enveloped in cosmic energy. He lands, exhaling an overwhelming primordial power. Despite the liberation, he moans in pain, sensing his locked muscles. Pressed, the young man understands he needs to flee immediately to survive. The executioner advances, flying with a lethal beam aiming at the girls. Faced with death, the ex-delinquent screams in panic, with nowhere to run. An emerald detonation sweeps the area in a deafening impact. The assassin lands, insulting the warrior for acts so useless. The smoke lowers, revealing that the magic was blocked before reaching the targets. With fury look, the hero defends the friend, screaming that she is not a primitive creature. With brute force, the human repels the attack, deviating the energy violently. His eyes shine intensely, proving that he assumed control. Enveloped in mystic aura, Amamiya wonders if he's still trapped, remembering the light. Staring at his hands, he senses a strange sensation, but notices that finally he can move. The lethal brightness calls his attention, and he notices the mortal risk of Nanju. He also notices the red-haired alien Fallen, defenseless close to the blonde. Desperate, the hero tries to act to save both. The student hesitates upon seeing the executioner's power, remembering the warrior lost badly. Extending his trembling hand, the human laments the lack of force, until the word power echoes. The memory of the hidden primordial energy arises like a snap. Holding the incandescent chest, he goes into a panic without knowing how to use that. Fearing for the companion's destiny, the guy swears to try anyway. The will to protect makes his chest shine like a star. By instinct, he extends the shining hand, screaming for the girls to be careful. Jumping into the line of fire, he generates a purple explosion, blocking the attack. The assassin freezes in the air, turning her face stunned with the intervention. The shockwave pushes the invader, annulling her magic with ease. The executioner drags her boots, managing to stop with difficulty. With the generated wind, the blonde falls sitting, letting out a scream of surprise. The warrior is also knocked down by the impact, grumbling upon hitting the ground. Staring at the boy, the Platinum One deduces the anomaly freed itself alone. Worried, the hero asks the friend's state and she sighs relieved. Turning his face, he checks the redhead, who confirms being fine. With a cruel smile, the assassin notes the evolution of him, but promises to kill him again. Aware of the difference in strength, the combatant gets up and tells the human to flee. Instead of retreating, the young man holds the warrior, confessing he doesn't know how to control the force. The touch transfers the primordial energy, illuminating her face of shock. Watching the transfer, the ex-delinquent enters a panic and asks for him to stop. The official narrows her eyes, noticing a drastic change in the atmosphere. Without warning, another annihilating beam tears the air against the pair. The blonde screams desperate, trying to alert the heroes about the fatal attack. Overflowing with power, Shiho extends her hand and blocks the magic with ease. Resisting with her hand, she moans of pain. Seeing the scene, Amamiya screams desperate. Pomelhout questions furious how they dare transfer the primordial force in front of her. Right behind, Amamiya decrees that he will not allow the executioner to fulfill her objective. The assassin touches her face, guaranteeing that she will annihilate everyone without failing. The invader's vision distorts into a vortex, while she yells a threat of extermination. Confused, Nanju senses something strange. The parasite enters a panic, ordering her to hold onto something. A colossal black hole of sharp teeth arises, swallowing everything with gravitational force. Focused, Pomelhout observes the destruction through her corrupted eye. Caught by the suction, Amamiya and Shiho float. The human enters despair. Losing friction, the heroes are dragged toward the vacuum. In the critical millisecond, shadowy tentacles shoot from the ground and grab the student's arm. The guy calls for his ally upon seeing Nanju using powers to anchor everyone. Celebrating, the parasite asks that they not let go. Exhausted, Nanju warns she will hold the enemy while they try something. Nanju blushes, confessing to hating that, but accepts the sacrifice to transfer the power. She approaches the guy, demanding that he do what he tried before. Confused, Amamiya doesn't understand. Red with shame, Nanju yells, ordering the student to kiss her immediately. Observing the shouting, Pomelhout judges the scene, asking if they think it will work. The executioner increases the power of the black hole, saying she wouldn't let such ridiculous tactic happen. With double gravity, Shiho is dragged along the ground, noticing the enemy's increase of power. The alien warns, panicked, that she is being sucked to the center. Consumed by her own magic, Pomelhout moans with effort while the anomaly devours everything. Nanju screams while the three fall into the magic abyss. Desperate, the blonde asks until where they will fall. The boy notices a space inside the alien's eye. Evaluating, the student concludes that gravity is crushing. The partner reprimands him for wanting to lecture. A light arises down there. She notes they will fall toward the unknown. The parasite despairs, warning that everyone will die if they don't get out quickly. The host doesn't understand. The creature explains that the gravitational pressure will stretch them to the limit. The force acts, tearing the young girl's skin and making drops of blood float. Sensing the pressure tearing clothes, Shiho petrifies her body not to be torn apart. The pain becomes unbearable and she yells. The hero calls for the friend in the fall. Gravity hits the guy, making him scream upon sensing his muscles being stretched. At the side, the warrior moans, impotent. The student calls for her name in the fall. Suddenly, the pressure disappears from the guy. He sees the golden energy and understands he was protected. Without thinking, he tries to extend his hand to protect them, but the distance prevents contact. In this millisecond, a risky idea arises to save everyone. With urgency, he begs that Nanju endure and pull him, so he can pass on the protection. Extending his trembling arms, the protagonist prepares the plan in the vacuum. Without hesitating, the girl uses shadowy threads to pull the colleague. The jolt surprises him. Spinning, he complains of dizziness, but focuses on the objective and calls for the friend. Exhausted, the young girl asks for apologies for the brutality, admitting lack of control over the powers. Observing the urgency, the parasite decides to act and jump out to tie both. But the creature makes a warning. Leaving the human's body would make her protection vanish. Spitting the tentacle, the ex-delinquent tells the creature to shut up, guaranteeing she will solve it alone. Determined, she concentrates the rest of her magic force for the impulse. With a swift movement, the girl throws the student against the red-haired alien. Thrown, the protagonist widens his eyes, sensing the tentacle pull his waist. Below, the heroine yells, sensing her own body giving way under the force of the abyss. Acting quickly, the little monster uses its elastic extension to grab the student's collar and break the impact. With a thud, the human collides against the combatant, reaching her in the fall. The proximity leaves both paralyzed, faces millimeters apart under cosmic energy. Without waiting, the guy advances and seals his lips on those of the warrior, starting the trance. The contact generates a magic explosion. The golden force heals the damages of the pressure. Recovered, the redhead pulls her face away, blushing and amazed with the vigor returned. With the first rescue done, the threads pull the hero. He warns he will save the blonde now. The shadowy creature interrupts, decreeing panic that it is too late. Gravity takes the price. The monster warns that the host's energy is zeroed. The parasite warns that pulling her would be suicide, since the suction would swallow the human power, killing everyone. Falling alone, the young girl smiles and orders them to flee. The pair watches the friend falling in shock. Bruised, the ex-delinquent asks for sincere apologies for having tricked the boy. Hearing the goodbye, the warrior's mind remembers the false request for friendship at the hospital. The memory shows the peaceful moment in which they shared a snack like normal girls. The memory focuses on the blonde's gentle smile upon introducing herself. That was the first bond on Earth. The heroine remembers having held her hands with emotion, trusting genuinely for the first time. Simultaneously, the student remembers the hearty breakfast prepared by her. Reliving the laughs, the hero admits that the time was short and laments that it was a lie. With tears, the young girl confesses having had fun, thanks for the experience and asks for final forgiveness. Seeing her being swallowed by darkness, Amamiya screams her name, extending his arm in despair. Furious, the human fuses the monster with a look and demands that the creature transfer the force. Caught by surprise, the parasite chokes upon being grabbed with force. The red-haired combatant hugs the guy to support. The creature enters a panic upon sensing the combined energy. Using the monster's elastic body as a cosmic hammer, the student spins his arm, yelling at the partner. The force of the throw is brutal. Being used as a rope, the parasite yells without understanding the madness. The tentacle stretches, tearing gravity until reaching the blonde. The hero yells that he would never abandon a friend. The scenario changes to the terrestrial surface. The executioner walks, decreeing that the cleanup was success. Adjusting the outfit, the invader grumbles about the delay, but celebrates having annihilated the targets. Turning her back, the assassin affirms it is time to go home to deliver the report. Suddenly, her steps stop. She freezes upon sensing a bizarre vibration behind her back. The alien's eye widens. She murmurs, confused about what kind of threat that is. Without warning, an enormous flaming arm erupts through the dimensional port. The attack pierces space and tears the villain's face. Blood flies and she enters shock. In an explosion of fire, the warrior emerges from the abyss, bringing her friends to safety. The pain of the attack tearing her face makes the executioner let out a deafening scream. Focused on the battle, the heroine fuses the enemy with a flaming and murderous look. The alien cuts the sky holding the student. He supports the fainted blonde who bleeds a lot. The human's face stamps a furious determination. He survived and will not forgive the aggressor. With agile impact, the combatant's feet touch the broken concrete. As soon as they land, the warrior releases the pair. The boy kneels, checking the friend's critical state. The assassin recoils, injured, noticing she spent more energy than she planned. Staring at the trio, the official tries to understand the absurdity of them having endured gravity. The hero hugs the fainted human. The villain deduces primordial power is hard to contain. Unable to accept, the invader invokes blue magic and promises to annihilate everyone without pity. A fulminant shot falls from the skies. The hero widens his eyes in shock at the lethal attack. Before magic pulverizes the pair, a pale hand arises, touching the ground and annulling the destruction. The shock generates an explosion. The ray is reflected, revealing Let's presence. Perplexed by the failure, the Platinum One lowers her hand, grumbling about the magic spent on the Taking advantage of the miracle, the guy sighs, focusing on waking the injured friend. Desperate, Amamiya screams for Nanju to hold firm. With a shadowy expression, Shiho questions why everyone wants to take what is hers, from the planet to the guy. Surprised, the executioner counters the absurdity of the girl talking about the Earthling's power as being hers. The assassin warns that the redhead isn't the only one after the force, and that the situation will worsen as he matures. Pomelhout affirms that all will clamor for that power, like that criminal who is in the Earthling girl. The official warns that if any cosmic trash touches that energy, the universe will suffer a disaster without precedent. For the Platinum One, once was enough. Soon she decrees that they will act for galactic peace. Extending her hand, the invader sentences that the shadowy energy must be erased as absolute law. She concludes that this is a direct order from the Galactic Union. Despising the speech, the warrior from Misha counters, irritated, questioning what this has to do with her. Pomelhout blinks confused, asking what the girl said. Overflowing with fury, the heroine screams that she doesn't even have a place in the universe anymore, so she doesn't care about this peace. The assassin mocks, deducing she speaks of her home planet Misha. With a cynical smile, the Platinum One realizes the survivor knew the Union destroyed her world. Maintaining the tone, the executioner affirms that she should have accepted their offer. The official declares that the destruction of Misha was the people's own fault. But the redhead shoots through the air, indignant, yelling how the enemy has the courage to say such nonsense. A memory arises of the survivor, remembering the abandonment by her own parents. The memory shows children humiliating her, proving that the place had terrible people. However, her teacher's smile comforts her, and the girl admits that everyone she loved lived there. Advancing with an arm in flames, the heroine screams that that was her only home. The blow collides with the Platinum One's defense. The warrior demands that she not treat her loss as something banal. Blocking the attack, the executioner activates petrification on her arm. The woman explains that this high-level technique resonates with the dimensional waves of Misha's core. Holding a splinter, the invader reveals the idea was to combine this with the Union's technology. Thus, they would build a civilization capable of crossing galaxies without need for spaceships. Crushing the stone, she justifies that they proposed the delivery of the core, but since they refused, they had no choice. The redhead's eyes overflow with hatred. The assassin continues, demonizing Misha's technology. Cold, the official says they had no utility for a useless race, so they decimated the population and stole the core. Thanks to that, the Union expanded its reach, charging the other races, proving the planet didn't disappear by chance. With a cruel smile, the Platinum One decrees that her people's civilization contributed upon being erased. The stones shatter under the heroine's feet while the hatred boils. The face of the warrior from Misha is taken by murderous fury. The cosmic assassin turns with boredom, reinforcing that if they accepted the offer, the disaster would be less. In a sadistic tone, the invader concludes that they would have kept their pathetic lives. Consumed, the combatant advances in a swift impulse. The executioner widens her eyes, noticing the opponent's speed increased. With a war cry, the alien pours her resentment into the attack. Delivering blows, the heroine mocks the offer, screaming how they planned the destruction since the beginning. Pressed, the official defends herself and warns she finished playing. The warrior delivers a flaming kick, declaring she will never lose anyone again. Cutting the lunge, the assassin strikes back, guaranteeing she will not let the girl act as she pleases. The invader's eye shines, indicating she will use her maximum force. With an agile movement, Pomelhout conjures an electric whip of pure energy. The blow hits the redhead, whipping her body against the ground. Fallen, the combatant moans, suffering the consequences. Behind, the earthling tries to recover from extreme weakness. The guy deduces the malaise is a side effect of the shared power and complains of the blurred vision. Walking to the prey, the executioner curses her as a filthy insect. The assassin's body shines and she sentences she should have erased all survivors, decrees the end of the last mission. Sensing the execution, Amamiya screams, warning his partner about the attack. Ignoring the exhaustion, the student runs to try to stop the tragedy. Before the villain attacks, shadowy tentacles sprout and trap her with violence. Caught by surprise, the woman stammers without understanding what that is. The hero holds the blonde, noticing she uses the shadowy energy the parasite left. Perplexed, the Platinum One notices that the human forced the alien power. Nanju screams the heroine's name. Taking advantage, the warrior redhead rests her hands on the ground, telling the rival not to underestimate Misha's technology. The executioner breaks the bindings, mocking that useless tricks will not trap her. With a smile in the shadows, the heroine promises to show how scary that power is. The official freezes, stunned upon sensing brutal energy emanating from the ground. Positioned behind the assassin, the warrior commands that the punishment descend from the skies. Overflowing with flaming energy, Shiho invokes the legacy of Misha with determination. A meteor of cosmic fire falls on the invader, illuminating the warehouse with destruction. The scene cuts to the shadowy council, where a leader demands reports about the annihilation. The advisor explains that they sent transmissions, but the official ignored them. Intrigued, the tentacled monster ponders if the planet hides a secret weapon. But the executioner's mind had already deduced that the silence was a sign of betrayal. In the council, the Platinum One decrees that the rebel colleagues suffered a drastic change. The being of multiple eyes agrees, ensuring that a primitive world wouldn't have defense technology. With a shining eye, Pomelhout promises to travel personally to execute the official and the earthling. Returning to the combat, the assassin stares at the incandescent rock about to crush her. Sweating cold in front of death, the invader murmurs in front of the magnitude of that attack. The meteor collides with the ground, causing an apocalyptic explosion of incalculable force. The impact melts the concrete, forming an immense crater while the heroes watch. The student covers his face from the strong wind, screaming in shock. Shiho maintains her hands, guiding the rest of her devastating power. The meteor swallows the entire building in a colossal explosion. Gradually, the smoke lowers, revealing the destroyed scenario. From a circle of fire, Amamiya asks, gasping, if they won. The warrior leaves the rubble, breathing deeply. She confirms, relieved, that the threat was eliminated. Exhausted, the guy sighs, deducing they are safe. The relief lasts little and he collapses to his knees without strength. Scared, the heroine runs to her partner, asking for caution. The hero coughs a lot of blood, staining himself. At the side, the redhead explains that sharing power without being awakened was a lethal absurdity. With this, a moan calls the pair's attention in the middle of the dust. Amamiya calls for his friend, seeing she regains consciousness. Suddenly, the blonde grabs her own head and screams in agony. Caught by surprise, the student is shocked upon sensing a bizarre aura emanate from her. The shadowy energy whips the air. The guy asks if it is the parasite's power. From the portal, the creature cries, complaining it was left in subspace. The warrior clarifies that the monster left force inside the girl upon leaving. She remembers that the ex-delinquent forced her body to the limit in the fall. The dark force continues to twist and tear the ground. The combatant explains that a normal human wouldn't endure so much energy. Pulling black threads, the heroine deduces that, during the possession, the monster maintained a balance. But since now she is a common citizen, this remainder destroys her interior. The alien warns that, if it continues, the young girl will explode from inside out. Horrified, the student tries to process the danger. Without knowing how to react, the protagonist stares at the desperate situation. Seeing the friend scream, the hero decrees they cannot abandon her and begs for a way out. Holding the threads, the partner reveals that a method exists to contain the lack of control. Desperate, the earthling grabs the warrior's shoulders, demanding the plan. Caught by surprise, she turns her face, hesitating to recovering her breath, Amamiya questions if his healing power would resolve it. The heroine agrees, irritated, and tells him to focus on his state before trying madness. She warns furiously that, if he transfers more vital energy, he will die. Ignoring the danger, the guy runs toward the friend who agonizes. On the way, a tentacle hits his chest with violence. Seeing the attack, the cosmic partner screams desperate. Even bruised, the student holds the human's face with firmness. Staring at the girl's panic eyes, he calls her, trying to transmit calm. The hero remembers the time the girl was a criminal and pushed everyone away. The memory changes to the peaceful moment in which she was gentle. He recognizes that the blonde always paid attention to him, even when no one else cared. Guilty, the guy wonders if the destiny would be different if he had been more present. In an act of sacrifice, he kisses the human, transferring primordial energy while asking for forgiveness. The contact makes the golden light flow, crushing the dark aura. Sensing the pain vanish, Nanju closes her eyes, finding peace in the chaos. The shock passes and the blonde focuses on the colleague's face, surprised by the attitude. Exhausted, the hero collapses, losing consciousness. The warrior runs through the rubble, screaming for her partner. The guy's body hits the concrete, motionless. While the ex-delinquent observes, the redhead arrives crying at his side. The scenario changes to a dark forest, with wavering steps on the grass. The platinum executioner limps through the terrain, clicking her tongue in frustration. Without an arm, the invader admits she needed to sacrifice it not to die by the meteor. Squeezing the injury, she deduces that, if she spends magic regenerating the arm, she won't return to the Union. Suddenly, a macabre voice calls the executioner's name. Homelhout stops, trying to recognize the familiar presence. The little parasite arises from a portal, presenting itself with hesitation. The woman questions suspiciously how it survived the abyss gravity. Laughing nervously, the creature explains that its flexible body helped and proposes a deal. The villain stays static upon hearing the little monster suggest they merge. Bleeding, the Platinum One fuses the parasite, asking if it thinks it can control her. The monster denies, swearing only to want to be useful before dying. The invader analyzes coldly her pathetic situation and the lack of magic. Accepting the alliance, she affirms that the sinister union is not a bad idea. Holding the creature, the parasite vibrates, not believing she accepted. Exhibiting her intention, the being celebrates that it will steal that strong bot. Without giving a chance, the executioner sinks her teeth and tears a piece of the monster. Swallowed alive, the creature enters a panic, without understanding the betrayal. Finishing the meal, the villain cleans her mouth, satisfied with the new power.